A busy weekend of racing action in the International Virtual Racing Association competition continues today. Yesterday we saw the return of the Club Sport Series, but eyes have moved from America to the UK as the GT Sprint Series returns for its second week of competition, and two 60-minute sprint races are up on the docket today. The trucks have made the short journey from Silverstone to Donington as we remain in England for another weekend of sprint racing chaos. Rounds number 1 and 2 delivered the fireworks, but as we transition from the wide and flowing Silverstone to the tight confines of Donington Park, who will be the team making the bold move near Castle Donington? Hello and welcome to round number 2 of the IVRA GT Sprint Series and the iRacing Esport Network and RaceSpot TV for coverage of this event. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. I'm joined in the commentary booth by veteran esports commentator Connery Maddock. As always, track cameras provided to us by TrackCams22 and Istvan Ballo. Additional track cameras provided to us by Tyler Maxson. And as always, live timing and scoring is available through our partners at Timing71. Keep up to date with your favorite teams and drivers throughout this sprint racing weekend. And Connery Maddock, delighted to bring you in to the broadcast booth today. We're looking at a cold day in Donington Park. You can see the track temperature there is just 19 degrees Celsius, and that means a lot of these drivers are going to be a bit concerned about those first few laps on cold tires.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful on the opening couple of laps here, like you said, with the temperatures where they are mostly cloudy conditions here. What was my home track for a decent amount of time while I was living at university. Unfortunately, I moved away from the Donington Park area, but it's still a track that is quite close to my heart in many ways. I can't wait to get started here, but first we do have qualifying.
We do, so let's take a look then quickly at your event format today. It starts off with 30 minutes of qualifying action, which has just gotten underway. We've got two sections to this qualifying. Qualifying 1, 15 minutes, and going to see all but 5 teams competing in this. 5 teams promoted directly from the warm-up session into qualifying number 2, where they're going to be fighting for pole position. 10 teams from qualifying 1 will get an additional 15 minutes to set lap times. And we should also note, once you leave the pit lane on your qualifying run, you cannot re-enter and re-exit. So one chance to get out on track and set the best lap time that you can. Then 2 60-minute sprint races ahead of us. The second one of these is going to be a reverse grid race, and that means a lot of excitement as cars who won in race number 1 will have a lot of overtaking to do in race number 2. Safety cars are always a looming presence in IVRA competitions, and just ask competitors in the Club Sport and Endurance Series about how exciting they can be. Let's take a look then at the series schedule. We started at Silverstone. We're now at Donington, and in a few weeks' time we'll head to Daytona International Speedway for our next round. But Connery Maddock, some very interesting tracks there, and we started at Silverstone. We got the tight Donington Park, similar I guess to Road Atlanta, but very different to what we're going to see next time out at Daytona.
Yeah, Daytona is always one that can throw up a few surprises, and it's one of those tracks where, you know, anyone, if you're vaguely in the top half of the field in terms of pace, you can potentially come home with the race win there due to being more of a strategic race with slipstream with the draft than it is a racer's racetrack. But the back end of the calendar certainly does look pretty spicy. But we're in the early stages of the season here, Arjuna. We had that round, first 2 rounds at Silverstone at the very start of the month, and now we head into the depths of October to Donington Park here for this one. And, you know, it's still early doors, but there's still early advantages to be gained here in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look then quickly at the championship standings, and there are a lot of updates that we need to queue up the viewers on. If you watch race number 1 and 2, you might be surprised looking at these standings, and that's because a number of post-race penalties. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail through the qualifying session, but pit lane penalties in effect. 25 total pit lane infractions across your 2 races, and that means a number of changes. The most significant one, the number 14 MAG Performance Sim Racing Team loses the race number 1 victory, demoted into position number 3. A few other big penalties as well in race number 2. You have the Apex Missers, the number 185, 35 seconds in total penalty time added to their post-race time, so they fall out of the top 10, but there you can see at the top of the standings as things run, the 2 RSR Esport by G Performance cars. And Connery, what a way to head into the next round as well. Those 2 cars have advanced directly from the warm-up into qualifying number 2.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. The pressure's off a little bit for those RSR cars. They've been, well, by far the fastest cars in practice and book their rightful spot in the second qualifying session. So they can just take a little bit of a break for the moment while they will get to see and watch this Q1 session and see which other cars of... Well, we'll get 10 progressing from this Q1 session into Q2, so they'll be able to see who's their best match here in this one. But with those guys out there for the moment, we've already got 5 minutes, well, around about 6 minutes done here in qualifying at the moment, and a couple of those times coming through. We've got Mag Performance, Apex Missers up there in terms of the times as well. Solar Vision Racing also setting the early pace here, but you know, it's open qualifying here. You have the maximum 15 minutes to be able to get your laps in, as many as you can do, not the usual solo car qualifying that we see here in iRacing. So in a way it can be a bit strategic as well. Maybe there are some other cars out there that can really help you with the draft coming down some of these straights, but they can equally hinder you through the corners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take one look at the point structure. 200 points being awarded to first place, all the way down to 40th for fourth, as we see one of the laps at Racing Ferraris flipping in the background of your shot. Let's see if we can take a replay of that one in just a few seconds' time. But like Connery says, lap time starting to come in qualifying. Left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the Mag Performance Sim Racing team. Currently a 1:26.323 is the provisional pole position time. But action is happening. Let's see if we can take a look at that one, Connery. It's not how you want to start your qualifying session, and like I mentioned, that car now going to be out of qualifying for the remainder of the session. Once you come out of pit lane, you cannot re-enter and re-exit, so laps at Racing going to be in a little bit of a disadvantage for the remainder of qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely, and well, it's not ideal. Let's just say that. It's probably an understatement seeing how wild that car went in the back of picture. Oh, it's even wilder than I first thought. Up but over onto the tyres and down into the gravel trap. Pascal, Juan Marcos Radchen there. Let's see what triggered all this then. Heading his way down the pit straight. Cars ahead trying to merge in. And oh, it wasn't his fault at all. There was an Audi that decided to spin back into traffic.
Ah, what a surprise Pascal must have had. Let's take another look on board then on the 235 Ferrari as you just see the tail end of that one there. Let's watch this one in slow motion. Not sure exactly which Audi this was on the right-hand side of track, but you'll see there, as we slow this one down a little bit on the grass, the Audi is going to pitch itself around, and the number 24 makes contact with the 235. Yeah,
that's a bit of a silly one, especially if you're on an outlap, which is what it seemed like for that Audi, just trying to let the faster traffic go, and then just dipping two tires into the grass is something you can't afford to do here on iRacing with the grass model being the way it is. You're basically losing all grip even if you dip two tires into the grass there. So it should be a little bit more aware in that situation. It's a pretty silly error, all things considered.
It is indeed, and we jump on board with provisional pole position sitter number 14, Michael Schlack's at the wheel right now, and this, of course, is the car that got demoted from that race number 1 win, dropped down to 3rd place. Still a podium position, but for the team used to be called Mini Danita Racing. Number 14 now goes by Mag Performance Sim Racing, looking good at the top of the standings, 2/10 clear as things stand from the Apex Misters, the number 185. Then you see Solar Vision, that number 32 car that had a very impressive run of its own before getting embroiled in some contact in race number 1, sitting in 3rd position here. Great to see some of these teams, but one team that I've been very interested to see joining the series, Connery, is HM Engineering. They're one of the teams that we're going to see in qualifying to advance directly from warm-up into that second part of qualifying. But HM Engineering, a team that we're starting to see a lot of here on the iRacing Esports Network, and great to see them jumping into another competition in IVRA GT Sprint Series now.
Yeah, absolutely. So trying to mix things in with some of the leagues that we broadcast here on Race Spot, and of course the iRacing special events as well. Mag Performance a bit wide there coming out of the chicane, but in towards the Melbourne hairpin then for Mag Performance. Still on, well, provisional fastest time here in Q1, and still a decent amount of time left to go in the session, so still could be threatened for that fastest time, but you can see that Mag Performance deciding to abandon this lap, instead take that very wide line coming up towards the final corner to get back out there on another fast lap.
So top left of your screen, you'll see 25 minutes total left in qualifying. What does that mean? Well, about 4 minutes and 45 seconds left before qualifying 1 comes to a close. For Michael Schlack, a few more laps potentially to try and improve on that 1:26.246 that currently sits at the top of the leaderboard. And we must also note, qualifying times in Q1 and 2 do get aggregated, so Schlax could set his best lap time of qualifying in this first 15 minutes. That would be enough to get him the pole position for race number 1. Let's take a look then at some of the other cars. See an Audi R8 LMS at the top of the board, while currently running in 5th position is the French team Xanady Motorsports. The BMW Z4 GT3 looking very strong here, Connery, and it's good to see such an old car in the iRacing service looking good. We have some other old cars in the service as well. We've got the likes of CXR Project Black in their Ford GT. You've got a singular McLaren as well, so good to see some of the old boys getting a run out as well here today.
Yeah, always loved how the BMW G. Ooh, careful for the number 44 coming up through towards the hairpin. Just getting a little bit sketchy on the grass, and again, it's not the first time that we've seen that. Instead, he decides to abandon the lap and head back towards the pit lane. But yeah, it's good to see the BMWs out there, even the McLarens as well, as you see the .exe sports car up on screen now. Just absolutely fantastic. I remember, a good couple of years ago in iRacing where these cars were much more popular. We even had a GT World Championship series where the McLaren was looking pretty strong in one of those years, and unfortunately it's sort of faded by the wayside as preferences and BOPs come and go, but it's good to see it out there once again.
Yeah, good to see the fire breathing from the rear of the exhaust as well. It was a popular choice for this year's Spa 24-hour race. It is a fire-breathing monster, hard to sometimes tame, but Ren Zielman behind the wheel of the 42 right now, down in 23rd place provisionally. They had a rough round in that first race weekend. Let's see if the McLaren has some better luck this time around. Does look as though he is going to continue going on another qualifying lap. Just a few minutes left in this first part of the qualifying session. And Connery, there was an update to the iRacing service this past week, and there wasn't too many changes in the iRacing balance of performance in this GT3 class, but one thing that we did see was a slight change in aerodynamic performance to the Audi R8 GT3 car. So it'll be interesting to see here exactly how that's going to affect the car, but clearly for the number 14 and Nick Madsen, who I think is also going to be sharing the wheel of the MAG Performance number 14 car, they are looking very strong in their Audi R8 LMS car.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have really affected them too much, of course. It's always a bit of a balancing act when it comes to balance performance. iRacing try to do their best from their side, and of course some private leagues, private tournaments as well decide to try and tweak the balance of performance in a way they want as well. So it's always a bit of an interesting one to try and get all of the cars at least on a bit of a level playing field. But Altitude Esports heading their way out the final corner in their Ferrari. Across the line they go, P number 9 for the moment here in Q1. They are inside the top 10 that they need, but again, it's getting quite late on in the session now.
Yeah, just one car actually still on track, not in the top 10. Everyone else has dived down onto pit lane, and that is the .exe Esport fire-breathing McLaren. The number 42 car as he crosses the line one more time with 1 minute and 15 seconds left to run in qualifying 1. He will have the opportunity to complete this flying lap if he will, but not looking like number 42 and Ren Zielman going to be able to punch their ticket into quali number 2. NJB Performance, by the way, the 733 Audi that we had just taken a look at, has abandoned their run as well. So sole car left on track right now for the 42, and got a few minutes just to see exactly what he's going to do. But right now, left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the top 10 that are provisionally right now going to advance their way up into qualifying number 2. You've got the MAG Performance Sim Racing team, the Apex Missers, Solar Vision Racing. You've got the second Apex Missers car as well, Xanady Motorsports, Pro Driver Esports, Team Oblivion Racing, the number 64. And you've got Shibsky Racing, who had a very, very good run yesterday in the IVRA Club Cup. They had one win in race number 2, 4 podiums across 2 races, so Shibsky Racing continue to deliver in IVRA competitions. And you've got Altitude Esports, the Ferrari that we saw just a few moments ago, and NJB Performance, the 733, half a second behind MAG Performance, but that's going to be enough to get them into qualifying 2 as things stands. We still ride on board with the number 42 as he works his way around the Melbourne hairpin, now makes his way up towards Goddard's, and we'll see what the lap time's looking like, but doesn't seem like this is a particularly quick lap time for Zielman. Is he going to potentially abandon this run? Yes, he is. Down onto pit lane he's going to go, and that will be the end of qualifying 1.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mag Performance topping the timing sheets in this particular session. Apex misses second place, Solar Vision in third. As for those drivers on the bubble, though, NJB Performance was the 10th car in the order. So that means everyone from Quasar Sim Racing in P11 and down, unfortunately, not going to get themselves up into Q2 to try and fight for that pole position. But there we go. It was only actually about 300ths of a second between P10 and P11 at the end of that session. There, you'll actually see that as the order cycles through. So it's a very, very close affair to even get into this into that second and final qualifying.
So qualifying results from Q1. Mag Performance Sim Racing a 1:26.246, and like we say, look at some of the deltas as we're going to scroll through the field. Top 10 up on your screen. We'll be back out on track in just a few moments' time as qualifying 2 about to get underway. Scroll through some of the teams that are going to have to sit out the next 15 minutes. The likes of Quasar Sim Racing, the number 26. Lapset Racing Team, the number 235 that went for a flyer early in the qualifying session. Maybe a few more laps on track would have helped them advance into qualifying number 2. You've got the Archer Brothers Esports, the likes of Roaring Chicken Nuggets, and an interesting car to see there, the Team Heiskenveld number 48. The sister car made it straight into qualifying number 2, one of the quickest cars in the warm-up session once again. So Andrei Ratkovich needs to find a little bit more pace compared to his teammates. See some other Lapset Racing Team cars in 18th and 19th, and FBP Racing Ferrari down in 20th, and then final 8 cars who competed in qualifying number 1. Mayor Sim Speed Performance at the back with Florian Volk, but we've seen them with some more impressive pace than that qualifying performance might show. We'll hope to see some more results in just a few moments. Clock continues to tick away. 2 minutes to go until we get underway with qualifying number 2, but we're here at the Donington Park circuit, and what a track this is for GT Racing, Connery. It's tight, it's twisty, but you can make passes happen at basically any corner of the track if you want to, and in a sprint race like this, we may see a lot of action up and down the field.
Yeah, so basically the passing opportunities here depends how brave you are. The most simple one, at least in this particular, the Grand Prix layout of the circuit, easiest place to make things happen, probably down into turn number 11, which is the hairpin big braking zone, big wide opening that you can sling your way down the inside of. But, you know, you still have opportunities up through turn 1. If you make it side by side through Redgate, you can just so easily make it side by side through Hollywood, down the Crater Curves, down through the old hairpin, and everywhere else around the circuit. I remember commentating some old, we have the Skip Barber here on the iRacing service that tends to do pretty well at this racetrack, and it's whether or not it's particularly suited to that sort of racing when we come to big old GT3 land, I'm not entirely sure, but at least for the less powerful formulas, less powerful cars, it seems to really play host to some fantastic racing, and hopefully this translates to this one as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is a circuit that we mustn't forget has hosted F1 in the past. It wasn't that long ago, just the end of the last decade, that there were rumors that F1 would come back to Donington Park. Money always a factor in those decisions, though. Let's take a look once again, though, at today's event format. We're in the middle of qualifying for race number 1 in the 5-minute break in between qualifying 1 and 2. About to get back on track with 15 cars fighting it out for pole position for race number 1. Both of our races are 60-minute sprint affairs, but race number 2 is a reverse grid race. There will be a 40-minute break in between the 2 races. We'll have post-race coverage after race number 1, speak to as many of the podium finishers as we have the time to do. Then we'll have a short pre-race before we get started for round number 2. Let's also take this opportunity, Connery, to talk about that pit lane penalty infraction that I mentioned at the top of the show. Now, number of teams being caught out by this across all of the IVRA competitions, it must be said, not just here in the GT Sprint Series. It's something we saw in the opening round of IVRA Endurance as well. I counted upwards of 30 penalties being handed down there. It's very simple. You get 3 seconds to transition between your slow lane and the fast lane in pit lane. This adds an extra step of realism to all the teams trying to make sure they don't hit other cars in pit lane. But, you know, it's a very simple rule, and I'll be hoping that some teams don't get caught out once again here, because the likes of the number 14 and Mag Performance will be hoping not to lose another race win via pit lane penalty that really could have been mitigated.
I'm sure most of these teams would have learnt their lesson, though, especially after the first race meeting here in this series. If they haven't learned their lesson, well, more penalties will definitely be on their way. But we are underway. The green flag is out for Q2 here as the teams hit the circuit here for the 15 minutes final qualifying session that we have here in this one. And it's going to be interesting to see if the RSR team especially can get themselves the same sort of pace that they had in practice here. Of course, a little bit more of a clearer track here, considering there's a huge handful of teams that unfortunately didn't get through to this stage. So maybe a little bit more room to work with, a little bit more room to get those clear laps in that they require.
And already we're starting to see some split strategies because the number 78, the Team Heiskenveld number 78, that I think Max Riedmuller is going to get behind the wheel of in qualifying, has elected not to come out at the beginning of qualifying. Neither has Shipsky Racing. Mag Performance Sim Racing team, I believe, is just heading out onto track right now. So some interesting strategies here, Connery. You do obviously have the choice in this 15-minute window. If you maybe want to wait a few minutes, head out onto track a bit after all of your competitors have done, you'll have the added advantage of having a benchmark, as that's one of the Audis that's just spun around. I'm not sure who that one is. That might be Team Oblivion Racing, and Thomas Cope at the wheel for them right now.
I mean, cold tires coming out of the pit lane on the first lap of qualifying. Probably not the weirdest incident, but again, something that you don't want to see is Thomas Cope just hangs around there, waits for a clear track to head his way back through. In fact, he had a decent amount of gap there, but of course doesn't want to get hit by any unsafe rejoin penalties, so he's just going to play it safe for now. But coming out of the final corner, yeah, just completely dropped the car on the exit there. So that's all to do with cold tires, as Team Oblivion not having the best of starts to their Q2, but still plenty of time to recover from something like that. And good on Thomas for holding the brakes and making sure that he can rejoin the track safely.
And I'm not sure he was the only driver having some issues. Let's take a look at a replay then for the number 733, Niels Borkage behind the wheel for the Audi. And there you see going wide at the old hairpin. That's not what you want to do on a qualifying lap. So clearly some cars still getting up to speed as qualifying 1 is over now and you head into qualifying 2. 15 cars battling it out for pole position honors here. And remember, qualifying 1 times do count as well. So if cars can't go faster than they did in qualifying number 1, that lap time from Q1 will still stand. And as cars begin to cross the line once again, we'll start to get some updated lap times as they start to come in. We're watching the 733 as he continues to make his way around the track. The number 32, Stefan Schlacker, the first car across the line with a 1:27.662. So he's still got a full second to find in terms of lap times as things stand, but 11 minutes still to go. A nice little train of cars here, Connery, but I don't know about you. Personally, in these open qualifying sessions, I prefer to find a little bit more clean air. Yes, you do lose that benefit of the draft, but you can see some of these cars are already getting very sketchy, and I think the added distraction of dirty air and that car in front of you is proving to be a little bit challenging for some of these cars today.
It can be pretty tough, but it's all about driver preference, yeah. I mean, I don't think the draft is going to be that influential at a circuit such as this, so you can really afford to run in your own little space if so required. Let's have a look at the replay here for Solar Vision Racing. Again, that's what happens when you dip 2 tires into the dirt and or grass. It really doesn't like it.
And one more car then who's already back in pit lane. Solar Vision Racing will miss the remainder of the 10 minutes of qualifying. And for Stefan Schlacker, who had a fantastic defensive drive, it must be said, in race number 1 at Silverstone to hold on to a lead that his teammate had given him. He was taken out by some contact made by some of the fellow competitors, but Schlacker will be hoping for a slightly better race. Qualifying maybe not going the way he would have intended, but we watch some of the lap times as they continue to trickle in. N-Race Esports, for example, 3rd quickest in qualifying, all the way down in 32nd as things run. Still waiting for a representative lap time from them. HM Engineering, who I was also talking about, one of the teams I was excited to see here in IVRA competitions, down in 21st. Tires seemingly still yet to come up to temp some pressure for that number 49 Ferrari, as Mark McCormack is going to come down into that old hairpin section. But currently, Connery, it definitely looks like a lot of these teams struggling for lap time as compared to what we saw in Q number 1.
And just as you say that, RSR decide to stamp their authority here on this one, going P1 and P3 in their two different cars in their 55 and their 56. Unfortunately, as they do so, these things do tend to break our graphics, but let's just move past that one. I think it's good for Mag Performance Sim Racing to actually be able to split the RSR cars at the moment. That shows a decent amount of pace from them, but I'm looking at the gap between RSR and Mag Performance as far as P1 and P2 is concerned, and it's quite a healthy one. It's about 0.4 of a second gap between P1 and P2 here in quali at the moment. So yeah, that's a big gap to be having to deal with here, but 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, that's a big gap, and interesting to note as well, the number 55 that sits on the provisional pole position isn't the current championship leader. So for Boris Avando, currently behind the wheel for RSR by G Performance, good lap time so far, clear of his teammate as well by over half a second. 0.54 is the gap to Jan Nosak in the number 56. Couple cars waiting for the lap times to come back in. There you can see on the left hand side of your screen, HM Engineering up into 5th place. They've done a 1:26.454, so that's 0.6 of a second currently behind provisional pole position. Stefan Schlacker obviously with that incident going to be down on pit lane for the remainder of the 8 minutes in quali. The Apex Missers number 185 also not on track as things stand, and guess who has finally rolled out and is about to start their first lap? The Team Heiskenveld number 78.
Yeah, just as you say that though, RSR in their 55, they came across the line again and went even faster with a 1:25.652. So that extends the gap to P2 up to 0.6 of a second now. So things are steadily getting pretty far away from those teams and drivers behind to try and search for pole position here. Maybe Team Heusingfeld is one of those teams that has such a huge amount of experience here in iRacing special events, in many leagues and tournaments as well. They're definitely a name to be reckoned with, but can they challenge RSR's blistering lap time here in Q2? That's the question. Max Riedmuller behind the wheel of this one as he heads his way up through Coppice Corner, down the straights towards the chicane. About 50 seconds before he hits the brakes here in towards the chicane. Just try and tiptoe that car through, clip the two apexes. Oh, a bit deep over that second apex though. That's not going to be ideal. Had to be careful about getting the slowdown penalty there as well, and a instant point to invalidate your lap time, but it looks like he's still going to continue on with it. He has to, of course, can't take the toe back towards the pit lane. Through the hairpin he comes, and now up towards the final corner. 1:17 on his clock right now, a 1:25.6 to beat, and he has to avoid a car spun on the inside there. That's going to lose him yet more time.
And that is your current... Yes, that's Ovando who's spun around at the last corner as well. So Ovando, pushing for an even better lap time, has managed to loop it by himself. Let's take a look at this replay. We'll see what happens going around that last hairpin corner. All by himself, goes a little bit deep, touches the grass, and his teammate behind him must not be too happy about potentially having a qualifying lap ruined. Let's take another look at this from an aerial look now.
Well, he also ruined Team Heusingfeld's lap as well, as if that hadn't been ruined by maybe an instant point coming through the chicane. But let's have a look again. It's just a bit of a lazy one out into the grass, spun back around in front of his teammate, in front of another BMW as well, which had to slam on the anchors. And then here comes Team Heusingfeld. Oh, just narrowly avoids them on the apex, on the curb. I wouldn't say it was ideal for Boris to roll that car forwards with traffic coming. It definitely scared Max out of the way.
I think that second BMW was actually heading down onto pit lane as we take a look on board with the number 78, whose lap ended up only being good enough for 12th position. So a lot of work still to do for Team Heiskenveld as they head down into the second to last corner on this one lap. Still 5 minutes to go for Riedmuller to try and set a better lap time, and Riedmuller had some good pace last time out at Silverstone. Be hoping to show more of the same, going a bit deep into the braking zone. I wonder if he's just setting up for the next flying lap. But let's go back to something you just mentioned, Connery, which was the risk you can sometimes take going through the chicane when you potentially get an incident point and a slowdown. Well, Stefan Schlacker, by the way, in our YouTube chat was talking about he was already 0.3 of a second up. He wanted a bit more, pushing a little bit too hard, went out onto the grass and lost it all. There's this risk versus reward battle that you play in qualifying, but when you know it's one chance to be a hero, you put it all out there on the line, and we're about to see exactly who is the quickest driver in the grid today.
Yeah, Max Riedmuller really taking a lot of exit curve through the old hairpin, trying to find the lap time out there. Of course, his previous one spoiled somewhat by overcooking it into the chicane, and your current qualifying leader almost pulling out in front of him through the final corner. But Max Riedmuller has to put that out of his mind now, just go chasing on this lap instead. Still has about 4 minutes and 30 seconds left in the session to be able to mount a challenge for the positions inside the top 5. That's a little bit better there coming through the chicane. And now it looks like it's going to be plain sailing all the way down in towards the Melbourne hairpin. No one really ahead of him to spoil his lap this time around. He's got a massive amount of clear air ahead, so he should be clear all the way to the start-finish line here. And Max Riedmuller into the final corner then, a bit more of a shallow entry than we've been used to seeing. Able to power off the corner. There's the lap time up on screen. 1:25.652 to beat, and it's a 1:25.991. It's a decent lap there for Team Hoisingveld, and it puts them up into second place.
Yeah, that stunning lap from Ovando still reigns king. 1:25.652, the current provisional pole position, and Max Riedmuller just over 0.3 of a second off the pace as things run. He does appear to be one of the few cars out on track with a chance of beating Ovando and the number 55. The number 56, Nosek, still out there on track in 5th position as things stands. You got Shipsky Racing, the number 222, also out on track. They're down in 15th place as things run right now, so they'll be hoping to move up a few positions. But we watch Riedmuller as he once again works on another lap. 3 minutes to go in qualifying. The last potential opportunity for a car to displace the number 55 from the top of the leaderboard. And it's been interesting to watch Riedmuller down in through this chicane. He's been carrying a lot of speed, trying to cut as much of the track as possible, taking a lot of risk. There you can see using a bit less of the curb. I think he might have actually abandoned this lap, Connery, trying to set up maybe for his next and final flying attempt.
Well, he's starting to run out of time, and the longer he stays out there, the older those tires are going to get, and they're not going to be as performant as they were maybe 1 or 2 laps after coming off the pit lane. That's when they get into their optimal window as far as the temperatures and pressures are concerned. He might even dive towards the pit lane here. There we go, diving towards the pit lane. He'll be able to get a stop in and maybe get an out lap and a flyer, possibly, maybe even 2. So this one's going to be close here for Team Hoisingveld as they take a trip down towards the pit lane to get a fresh head of rubber.
Well, not in IVRA competition, so Team Hoisingveld down onto pit lane have elected to finish their qualifying run, and as Shipsky Racing does the same thing as well, stopping on track and getting back into pit lane. With 2 minutes left in qualifying, no cars left on track, the grid order does appear to be set. So for race number 1, left-hand side of the screen, actually, let's go ahead, take a look then at your full screen qualifying results. So RSR by G Performance continuing on from a strong performance in race weekend number 1, with Boris Ovando taking pole position with a 1:25.652. Team Hoisingveld number 78 looking to continue on from a decent qualifying performance last time out. The race didn't go as smoothly as they would have wanted. Riedmuller 0.3 of a second behind pole position, with Mag Performance Sim Racing 3rd position, 0.6 of a second off. Then you got the number 199 N-Race Esports. We'll just scroll through these results, Connery, because we're obviously going to take another look at this when we scroll through the starting order for race number 1. But interesting to note, queue number 2 did appear to be a lot quicker than queue number 1. A lot of those teams who made it in at the tail end of the top 10 have been bumped to the tail end of the top 15 now. Shipsky Racing, you'll see there, up into 12th with a good lap at the end of qualifying number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be a little bit congested there in the mid-pack. You can see how close the qualifying times are, at least 10th or so of a second, separating a good chunk of drivers down to the bottom end of the top 15. So there might be a lot of traffic back there, not a lot of space to work with as far as each team and driver is concerned in that one. You can see the roaring Chicken Nuggets. I think that's probably the best team name that I have ever seen in sim racing there, that team in P20, Roaring Chicken Nuggets. It is my favorite order from a certain fast food restaurant, so hopefully they do well in this one, but 1.5 seconds off the qualifying leader. It's still relatively close. You know, we sometimes see races, sometimes see leagues have a decent spread as far as their pace is concerned, but everyone keeping within a couple of seconds is actually pretty good going.
And it presents a very intriguing opportunity in race number 2 for some of these names that you're seeing on screen right now to maybe be mixed up, push to the front of the grid for race number 2 with that reverse grid. So some potential opportunities. The Roaring Chicken Nuggets is a pretty good name, Connery, but I forget there's been a few names in IVRA competitions that have been very, very nice. There was one yesterday that I'm now racking my brains trying to think about. Too many IVRA competitions in too many days. My brain's not working as well as it should be.
Yeah, possibly, but you can see Barney's arm working as he waves that checkered flag up at the starter stand, but everyone else just waiting for this qualifying session to actually tick down. Sometimes the iRacing decides to give you a little bit of a buffer here in terms of open qualifying before we get the gridding procedure underway. But yeah, RSR by G Performance, number 55, starting from pole position here today with Team Hoisingveld on that front row. That's going to be a pretty bombastic battle, especially if Hoisingveld's able to get a good start and able to mount a challenge into turn 1.
Let's take a look then at your standings once again while we wait for qualifying to officially come to a close. It is the 2 RSR Esport by G Performance cars lining up 1 and 2. You see the number 14 Mag Performance Sim Racing team, they're tied with the number 58 Pro Driver Esports, 326 points, so only about 30 points or so behind the current leader in the championship. Still a long way to go. We have 6 race weekends. This is only race weekend number 2. You see the second place car lining up in grid number 1, race number 1 rather. You got Team Heiskeveld number 78. Rough race weekend number 1. They made a bit of a basic mistake. They forgot to follow some of the basic rules for the series, Connor. And I mean, it's something that you have to, when you come into these private series, you see you have to read the rule books, make sure you understand them, and follow them to a T. Yeah,
even if you only have 24-hour notice of broadcasting the series like I did coming into this one. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've broadcasted so many leagues where some teams have signed up with the wrong car number and they've had to take a penalty early on in the race as a result. So that is pretty embarrassing for whoever's responsibility that is supposed to be.
It is. We'll hope that for a few of these teams they can avoid some of these penalties. But let's take a look then at the starting grid for race number 1, and it's RSR by G Performance number 55 that's going to line up on pole position. Field will be in control of Boris Avando, who took pole position by 0.3 of a second from Team Heiskeveld number 78. Row number 2 is Mag Performance Sim Racing Team and Nick Madsen. N-Race Esports, the number 199, completes row number 2. Let's scroll through the rest of your grid because the cars are gridding up and about to take off on their formation lap. The second RSR by G Performance car, the number 56, going to line up in 5th place with Pro Driver Esports, the Apex Missers, number 185, HM Engineering, number 49. You got Solar Vision Racing, NJB Performance, number 733. That is your top 10 starting positions. Then Apex Missers, the number 186 car, going to line up in 11th place with Shipsky Racing, completing row number 6. Altitude Esports in their Ferrari in 13th place. Team Oblivion Racing in their Audi in 14th place. Xanity Motorsports in 15th with Quasar Sim Racing Leo going to start in 16th. Laps at Racing, the number 235, we saw them having a big incident in qualifying. They'll be hoping to stay a little bit cleaner this time around. They got Archer Brothers Esports, the number 202, lining up next to them. Pro Driver Esports and Roaring Chicken Nuggets complete the top 20. Quasar Sim Racing, number 25, going to be in 21st place with the sister team Heiskeveld car starting all the way back in 22nd place. Laps at Racing Team, the number 11 car, lines up in 23rd with their teammate, the number 17, next to them. Final few positions on the grid. We've got FBP Racing, Altitude Esports, number 23, Next Level Racing, the number 77, the fire-breathing McLaren for .exe, the number 42. Then final few cars, Team Vikings, FBP Racing, Estate Coffee Company, Awesome Motorsports Group, and then Mayor Sim Speed Performance, and the Ford for CXR Project Black. The cars are already rolling now. They work their way through the chicane, but Connery looking forward to the next hour of racing action.
Yeah, cars gotten themselves rolling now. Of course, it's a pretty short pace lap here, partially the way through of this one, and RSR by G Performance going to be under the control of this start in just a couple of moments' time. As soon as that pace car pulls down on towards pit lane. Just one corner away here, Iona.
One corner to go. Remember, there is a mandatory driver change. That pit window opens with 25 minutes gone and closes with 25 minutes to go. So a 10-minute window, but who is going to take the control of the start here? It is Boris Ovando, but look at that already. One of the cars is totally messed up there and completely jumped the start. And one of the laps at Racing Ferraris around in the background of your shot as well. It's complete chaos here as we make our way down in towards turn number 1. Ovando's going to have a good start, but it is the number 58 Pro Driver Esports car that got the dump on the start and is completely messed up further back in your field as well. They're slowly stringing themselves out. So we can make our way down into the hairpin, trying to figure out which Ferrari that was. There's another BMW going around, and now the 733 Audi is going around as well. Complete carnage at the start of this one.
Yeah, Pro Driver Esports in the grass as well. That was the number 58 car that had jumped the start. I can say that for basically certain at this point. So they'll get themselves cycling all the way back. There's a good couple of cars have had early problems here. I'm seeing the number 11 also having issues early on. That's the Lapsat Racing Team number 11 car as well at the very back of the field. So a bit of carnage both front and back of the field here on the first half a lap of this one. And RSR by G Performance number 55 still leads this one by Team Hoisingfels from Mag Performance. So the order at the front hasn't been messed up too much, especially since the jump starter has now fallen back through the field. But that one was a little bit of a mess, all things considered.
They're coming around the final corner for the first time. The number 78 putting all types of pressure to Boris Ovando in front of him. Let's go ahead, though, and start taking a look, Connery, at some of those replays of the start. Let's start, though, with whatever happened to the laps at Racing Ferrari. There you'll see the tail end of the incident as, once again, Pascal Radjin gets spun around, no fault of his own. Let's see if we can grab another look at this one, though, because as you see him getting back going again, it's just a complete checkup there, and I don't think he had anything he could really do to avoid this one as it unfolded in front of him.
Yeah, I also kind of want to get a view of the Pro Driver Esports car that had jumped the start in that situation as well, because I believe they went on green, but it's not the green that dictates the start here in this series. It's the race leader who gets themselves to dictate the start within the start zone. He is on board with Pro Driver Esports here, so obviously they've got some form of green there. They've got some form of sign that the field is going, but it's not the flagman's decision, actually.
Absolutely. You can see, by the way, that shot of the Ferrari still in the background. Let's see if we can look at some of the other incidents that happened on that lap number 1 down into the old hairpin it was. And did something happen to Ren Zuman? Oh, you see the BMW coming back onto the track in front of him there. All types of chaos. I think that was Liam Matthews in the Archer Brothers number 202. Let's take a look at this replay. He gets spun with contact from the Audi and then spins back right into the path of some of the cars in front of him. And oh, word, that's a big one as well.
Well, those Ferraris decided to really wrench the steering wheel to the left to try and avoid absolutely everything. I think they've been able to get through unscathed as well. I think it was one of the sort of neon greenish yellow front-end Ferraris that decided to take wild avoiding action there. Here's on board with Quasars. They just slow it all the way down, and the only way they had to go to try and get out of that was onto the grass on the right-hand side. So good heads-up driving there. As from the Quasar cars, we have more replays. This is CXR Project Black A deciding to completely bail out the chicane.
Yeah, they've got some major steering damage, so disappointing to see the sole running Ford GT in our field struggling all the way at the back. Let's jump back then to some of the live pictures further up in your field. The number 55 slowly starting to pull away, a little bit of a gap here from the number 78 car. You see the gap up to 7/10 of a second. That BMW Z4 definitely strong down the straightaways. We expect the Audi to be a bit quicker through the twistier bits, but maybe just not able to get as much grunt down the straight as you would want. You also see Mag Performance Sim Racing number 14 sticking close behind them. I think it's fair to say the lap number 1 carnage has split up the field a little bit more than we expected. There are still battle packs throughout the field. There you can see one, Shipsky Racing in 10th place, having to hold off some charging cars behind them. You got the likes of the Apex Misters and Team Oblivion Racing as Team Oblivion Racing spins around the 222, and then Altitude Esports decides to go and flip the 222 for good measure as well.
Yeah, that's a little bit lazy down into that. Of course, having an attempt around the outside. Of course, there's, you know, you're open to the possibility, but the contact is just a little lazy. You can see around the outside attempted there by that Oblivion Audi and just cuts a little bit too deep into the corner, too deep into that into the inside line, and the BMW had absolutely nothing to do with that. Had a car just press right into their rear left bumper and spun them around the circuit. There's been yet more problems out there on circuit as well. Look at this 3 wide moments here into the left, and well, the Lapsat racing car deciding that, well, I don't have enough track here, I'm gonna have to use the grass.
Yeah, and more replays as well. What is going on here? Something happened as well to Shipsky Racing once they came back on the track. Oh my word, Lapsat Racing as well, not having a good one of it at all. There was a second incident there for Shipsky Racing. Here we'll take a look at the slow-mo as it's the number 17 Lapsat Racing car, who, if we then stick on this replay, Connery, I believe is the same car that was then involved in the incident that we have right after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Lapsat Racing, I mean, it's up to the stewards to say if the rejoin was okay there in that situation. You can see that happened later on with the Lapsat Racing team probably getting a little bit of damage as a result of that contact, and the car just did not want to turn left whatsoever, so out into the grass it went. So we have about 6 minutes of this race done. It feels like we've had about 40 minutes of the race done with the amount of incidents that we've had so far in this one, but hopefully people can just calm down just a little bit and get themselves a little bit of space to work with and get some laps under their belt, because this early portion of the race is not what we have wanted to see, and it has, like you said, spread the field out quite considerably now, but knowing the amount of content that we've had, that's probably for the best.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say some of our YouTube chat talking about that first race weekend at Silverstone as well. That first race weekend had a lot of action, some spins, some contacts, a lot of passing as well. I don't think we're going to be getting too much of that here in race number 1 now. This is the main battle that I'm seeing up in the top 10. 49 HM Engineering. Something's happened to Mark McCormack as well. There you can see the front clip of the Ferrari is totally gone. And HM Engineering, making their debut in IVRA competitions, have had an issue. This might be similar to Solar Vision Racing in qualifying, getting onto the grass and spinning themselves straight into the tire barrier, and that is a very hard contact there. Yeah, very hard impact, and they're going to try and lift that car back. No, they actually took the tow directly back to the pits, so they're going to be pretty much done as far as this race is concerned, because that is going to be a very lengthy repair otherwise, and, well, it's not what you want on your debut, that is for certain, especially when you're looking so strong inside of the top 10 of the running order here. But again, a lot of other drivers and a lot of other teams in the pit lane right now are going to say, well, join the club, because we've had absolute mare of a start as well. Absolutely. A good battle going on, by the way, for 16th place overall. Mayor SimSpeed Performance, Florian Volk at the wheel right now, has just gotten past Altitude Esports and Luke Hobson, but battle continues to rage on as they head down into turn number 1, and there you can see a healthy train of cars behind them as well, so this might be just small battle pack starting to develop. The battle for the race lead is starting to close on in just a tad, by the way. Some other battles starting to develop in the edge of your top 10. You see here Quasar Sim Racing, Yoni Walters at the wheel of the 26 Audi, trying to chase down one of the Apex missers, who is hoping to hit some Apexes today. They're running 8th and 9th line astern as things run. Take a look quickly then at the battle for the lead, because number 78 doing a very good job here, Connery, and we talk about that pit window. It's going to open in about 15 minutes time. You're not going to be putting in much fuel, but we did see some teams decide that with a mandatory driver change, you can squeeze in a tire change if you're feeling brave. And I wonder if some of these teams are thinking that they're going to get the passes done in the pit road instead. And for the number 78, maybe some fuel saving happening here to jump the 55 in just a few moments time in pit lane. It is an option open to them, but in a race as short as this, with, you know, you're not having to take that much fuel, you know, half a tank maximum here in these cars, as far as that is concerned, unless they're fuel limited, of course. But Max Riedenmiller doing very well at the moment, being able to really catch up this gap, and has been able to lop about 1.5 tenths of a second off on that previous lap, and continues to reel in Boris Avando in that RSR by G Performance car. So the Audi really stretching its legs at the moment, and not really giving the BMW a lot of room to work with. As that gap now down to 4 tenths of a second. That's about half a tenth of a second improvement. Now basically a full tenth of a second improvement compared to when they came across the start-finish line last time. So
Team Hoaxing looking very, very strong in the early portions of this race.
And two different philosophies of cars. You've got the front-engine BMW Z4, then you've got the more mid-engine Audi R8. Two very different philosophies, producing some great racing action as down in towards second to last corner, the Melbourne hairpin they go. They're going to run up towards Goddard's now, and that gap continues to shrink, even down these straights where that BMW is a little bit more grunt. There is a car off the track, by the way. He's had a small issue. It's the Awesome Motorsport Group number 72 car. Let's take a look at the RaceBot TV replay of what's happened to the number 72 Ferrari, and just running a little bit wide there, and fortunate not to make contact with the tire barrier. We've seen two cars spinning violently into the inside tire wall there. Fortunately for the number 72, all good. As we jump back to the live pictures, as you see once again, Reed Muller losing a little bit of ground down that main straight. This is where he's going to start to gain it back though, Connery, in his Audi.
Yeah, you can just see the gap fluctuating in and out, and Tim Huizenveld in that downhill section through Kreinekers and through the old hairpin gained so much time. Basically the same amount of time that they lost on the straight coming down in towards turn 1 that RSR was able to stretch out. So it's just, you know, the different comfortabilities, the different advantages and disadvantages of each car just coming into effect at the moment. Sometimes one manufacturer is stronger in one portion of the circuit compared to the other, and that's just the natural fluctuation that we're seeing. A little bit of a battle, though, at the bottom end of the top 10, in fact just outside the top 10. There's a couple of cars scrapping. That's ProDriver Esports blacking their way down the inside of Team Huizenveld, at least attempting to, coming through turn 8, but Huizenveld had the speed coming off the corner on the outside line to make sure that the 24 Audi couldn't get themselves past. But a bad run through the chicane there for Huizenveld gives ProDriver Esports another chance, this time down in towards the hairpin. Late on the brakes here, you might be able to get the pass done as Valentin dives it deep in and just about able to get that pass complete. Yes, he has. Rajkovic has to fall back that one spot.
It's been a good start for Rajkovic still, though, up into 13th place as things run. He's struggling a little bit, though, in the battle packs as they run now. Team Oblivion Racing and Thomas Cope getting close now as they go through Goddard's down this main straight once again. Just over 12 minutes gone in this one. 47 minutes to go. Just over 12 minutes to go until we reach the start of the pit window, and we might start seeing different drivers jumping into different cars. And one thing we saw in that first race weekend is some teams have some fairly equal driver lineups. Other teams have a little bit more of a skew in terms of driver performances. The second driver sometimes stronger than the first one. We'll see exactly how that plays out. One driver I'm thinking of in particular, though, Stefan Schlacker, who took over from Nick Madsen in the number 32 with a fantastic defensive drive in the first race at Silverstone, now trying to put the pressure on the number 199 BMW in front of him for N-Race Esports. N-Race Esports, one of those teams that got straight into qualifying number 2 by virtue of a good performance in the warm-up session, as there seems to be more cars having issues in the background as well.
NJB Performance is in this one. There they are, trying to spin their car back around. There's been a couple of cars involved in this one, at least 3, I think. At least 3 that were in the altercation. Looking at it, Next Level Racing was the sort of first little instant here that caused a big moment behind, with cars just dealing with the concertina effect, all having to check up for that car going off the circuit, not wondering when that car is going to come back in. And NJB came quite hot into that and found a couple of cars ahead of him just braking on the exit of the corner. And Altitude also heavy. Ooh. Yeah,
let's take another look at this one, because Altitude Esports and Luke Hobson just gets absolutely sent into the tire barriers. They're not sure exactly who the car behind them was. Let's see if we can take another look at this. That would be hard to tell when it's just a number for now, but that might be one of the Team Vikings cars. Not 100% sure. Unfortunate though for Altitude Esports. It was looking better than round number 1 for them. Contact has pushed them back, and they're actually coming down pit lane as things stand. So they're going to have to come down for some damage repair. We'll see what happens to that car as well. Apex Missers, the number 185, has had an issue as well. What's happened here for Yuri Matheson? Let's take a look at this replay, Connery.
It's track limits once again. Dipping not 2 tires, but 4 tires into the grass this time around. So if you have a problem with 2 tires on the slippery surface, 4 tires, you absolutely have no chance, as Yuri has an unfortunate altercation with the tire barrier on the inside. He's not the first driver to do that. He can take solace in that fact, but the rest of his team will still be pretty disappointed in that one. Of course, solo car incident, things you don't like to see, and now that's a pretty torn up BMW for the remaining 45 minutes left in this race. So it seems like the incidents aren't going to really be put on hold here for the moment, are you know?
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, the apex missers missing an apex quite badly there. Fortunately, though, they didn't put the front end of that car directly into the tire barrier, so the front engine BMW continues to rage on, and we'll see what the 185 is able to do from the edge of the top 10. Back to the battle for your race lead, because the gap continues to ebb and flow right now. You can see up on your screen, 7/10 is the gap. Ovando pulling out just a little bit of an advantage here. And it looks as though this is a fairly evenly gapped battle as things stand. Ovando and Reed Muller fairly equal in terms of pace. We'll see what happens when the second drivers get back into the car, as Ashley Beard has had another issue down at the Old Hairpin. Let's take a look at the replay now. You can see just getting a little bit deep under braking, losing the rear end of the car momentarily. A good save there to get it back on track, but like Connery is saying, lots of cars still having issues. Let's jump to a battle still, though, between the N Race number 199 and Stefan Schlacker for Solar Vision Racing. Look at the lights being flashed now. This is the mental war games being played. Schlacker wants to get by. He doesn't want to take the risk on track. What he will do, though, Connery, is continue to apply the pressure until the 199 makes a mistake in front of him, and then Solar Vision will try and capitalize on anything they can.
A little bit of an error there for N-Race coming into Goddard's as the final corner. This car didn't seem completely settled with things coming through there, so Solar Vision able to gain another tenth of a second or so on the run down in towards turn number 1. You can see them trying to maximize the performance on the brakes as well, trying to brake a little bit later to try and draw that front bumper closer to the BMW's rear. And now down the hill they come through the Craner curves. Stefan Schlacker behind the wheel of that number 32. And you can see him continue to try and hound the back of the BMW, really making some good progress here on this in this first sector, into the second sector now, through Swanscurve, all the way through McLean's as turn 7. And the Audi still behind for the moment, but I think a good run out of Coppice here might give them a chance into the chicane.
And I'm just trying to figure this one out, Connery. Wasn't the 58 BMW that we see behind these two cars the car that jumped the start as well?
Well, I believe so, but then again, I would very much expect a penalty for them at least at the end of the race for that infringement, if it hasn't come through already.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm just wondering. If Schlacker takes a look down into the inside at the second to last corner, not able to get deep enough under braking, the 199 around the outside going to carry the momentum. Schlacker starting to get a little bit more impatient now as he sees the 56 car in front start to pull away as well. But just keep an eye out then on the number 58, because I wonder, Connery, if being in that position, you already know you've got this penalty coming down on you, at least we assume some type of penalty coming down to the number 58 and Adrian Vargas, but it doesn't make sense to then get yourself mixed up in further incidents as we're watching a great battle between the 199 and the 32. You don't want to get involved and inflict further punishment on yourselves.
Yeah, at this point, probably the decision might be to stick behind for them, even if they are the faster car of the three of them here, just so that you don't draw the ire of the stewards if there's further contact, because you're already in their bad books. But meanwhile, up on screen, battle for P number 18 up on screen there as they cycle their way through. I believe that is Team Vikings just getting passed by Quasar there further down the order, so the Audi just having to fall behind the Ferrari for the moment. The car off track for GT. Haven't seen one of those in a very long time, and CXR deciding that the grass needs to be mown.
Well, as he gets a little bit loose there, almost comes back into the path. He's already 10 laps down, we should say, AJ Southgate. Let's take a look at this replay as a little bit of off-road driving, some rallycross action. We have some Fords that get a bit more airtime on iRacing Esports Network in the rallycross world. And that is a interesting incident for Southgate there. There has been another one. Let's jump back to live pictures because Labette has had an incident. Let's take a look at this replay then as well. So more cars, and this is the FBP Racing 488 spinning around at the one and only corner, Connery. It seems to be a trend. When one car has an issue, we tend to get lots of replays from that very same corner.
Yeah, it reminds me of Oak Tree Corner at VIR, where there's just following the tyre tracks, the cars ahead of you into the mistake. But Having a look back to your race lead, then RSR by G Performance have been able to extend the gap back to Team Hoisingfeld compared to the last time we looked at it, and most of that came at lap 11, as you can see in the bottom right. 5.5 tenths of a second being lopped off in just that lap alone, so maybe a little bit of an error, a little bit of a mistake from Team Hoisingfeld in that lap has put them on the back foot, but they still remain within about 1.1 seconds of your race leader, so still in a decent spot. It's something they can work with as well, especially coming up towards the pit stop phase in just a couple of moments' time with the pit window being open. So 40 minutes left to go in this race, so they do have ample opportunities to come down in. I'm seeing the 64 Team Oblivion racing car actually out into the gravel at the moment, and they've dropped it all on their own, it looks like, and I think it is once again dipping 2 tires into the grass. And the important point is here that, well, it's a classic track, isn't it? You have the grass right up against the curbs and the actual white line. So if you overstep the mark, the track is going to bite you. This isn't a Tilke-designed racetrack by any means. You can't afford to run wide at any point at this circuit, and it seems like teams are here learning a hard lesson.
Yeah, definitely. That one, though, on the entry to that corner, we've seen cars go to the inside of that the subsequent corner, hitting that tire barrier cope, going off into the gravel on the outside. Fortunate to not take any damage there. You can see the rear wing on the number 64 looking pristine, factory fresh, if you will. But while that battle for the lead continues to just separate a little bit, there continues to now develop some more battles in your further on in the top 10 there. You can see as well something's happened to the N-Race Esport number 199. I think we missed that one, and Schlacker has moved himself up into P number 5, and the number 58 has also moved himself up 1 position as well. So there is some battling going on as well. Then you look further back, there's the Apex Missers, the 185, edge of the top 10. It's leading a train of 4 cars. Xanity Motorsports currently chasing them down with a Team Heisenfeld sister car at the rear end of this queue as well. So just 3 minutes to go until the pit window opens, and we might start to see some of the second drivers jumping in to get into the car for the first time. Now remember, the driver that started in qualifying, Connor, he has to start this race as Xanity Motorsports looks to the inside of the chicane. That's not a passing opportunity, and they're going to force Apex Missers to cut the chicane, and now the Apex Missers have a slowdown to deal with, but they rejoin right in the path of Pro Driver Esports, who sends them around. We'll take a look at that replay, but that was just a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, there's no room for Apex Missers to file back in line there. It was a hopeful move for Xanity Motorsports going too wide into the chicane. It can and sometimes does work, but the rejoin there from the Apex Missers was absolutely abysmal. Straight back onto the racing line on the left-hand side of the circuit, and there's nowhere for Felipe Vantin to go except for try to slam on the anchors, but even then it was too late.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at another replay here. Xanity Motorsports breaking down the inside. They were alongside, but that little hip check that they gave to the 185 forced them wide. And once again, there's no justification. You like to call out unsafe rejoins there, Connery.
I do.
I think we've just given you a perfect example. But before we keep talking about this, let's look at another incident that's happened for the 222 Shipsky Racing. And oh, wow, that's a violent spin on entry to a corner in a front engine car. We don't often see that. Let's take a look on board then with Shipsky Racing, but the chicane starting to be the source of a lot of chaos now, Connery.
I mean, they've got a major amount of damage on that car, so it's not entirely surprising that the balance is all out of whack. You can see the car just completely broken away. As soon as he put in any sort of input to that steering wheel, the car was always going to try and swap ends on him. So luckily, he wasn't able to hit the barrier in that occasion and add yet more damage to that BMW. I guess that is the silver lining to the absolutely huge black clouds that has been the race so far for them. 185 here, the Apex Missers continuing to try and recover what they can out of their race here in this situation. Trying to battle with the number 73, I believe it is. Yes, that's the Meyer Simpson Performance car. Florian Volk behind the wheel of that one. So, well, we're at the halfway point of this race. We're not even at the halfway point of this race yet, and we've already had enough incidents to try and fill the stewards' time for about 5-6 hours at this point. So it's going to be an interesting one as far as they're concerned in the little break between the two races that we have.
Yeah, Julian Bell in the IVRA GT Sprint Discord has already made a plea for drivers to just calm down a little bit. We've still got 35 minutes of action here in race number 1. We take a look at a battle on the edge of the top 10. Team Heisenfeld now up into 11th place. as a result of the Apex Misters dropping down the field. The Pro Driver Esports number 24. This time the Audi from Pro Driver trying to put some pressure, and Altitude Esports as well has jumped on into the back of this. Another incident has been taking place while we were watching this battle. Let's go take a look at this one. It's for the number 77, the Next Level Racing. What's going to happen here? Down in through turn number 1, and just gets sent around by the Ferrari behind. And is there going to be further contact with another car coming up behind? It appears as though not.
Yeah, the rejoin isn't the issue in this one. It's the Ferrari being a bit too overeager on exit, just completely running into the back of the Audi. There's a complete lack of spatial awareness from some of these drivers and teams at the moment. That is absolutely horrible. And FPP Racing have got to be really embarrassed about that one. There's more incidents happening on track right now as we speak, by the way, because I'm seeing the 185 Apex Misters car that's had a problem once again. And come on, guys, sort it out. I think we need the stewards to really just sort of bash their heads together at the moment, because this is not the way to go racing.
Yeah, this is just shocking driving here as well. The Apex Misters car has already been involved in an incident.
Look at this.
He's forcing that other car all the way to the inside and then instigates the contact with Thomas Cope as well. What a shame for Team Oblivion Racing, because that was looking like a good passing opportunity there. And yeah, to be quite frank, I don't understand. You'll get a better look here. The BMW blocks all the way, and as the track moves back to the left, the BMW does not give the space, and that might be one of the easier calls for race control today.
That was always going to be an incident there. Even if they were able to make it clean into the braking zone, there was no way that the car on the inside was going to be able to have the space to work with down into that. Or rather, yeah, I mean, it's thought to score contact in the end. You could see that as maybe a racing incident, but the heavy block towards the inside there was completely and utterly unnecessary, especially with the amount of damage that was on that car. They were going to struggle to hold on to that position anyway, so yeah, not exactly ideal, but hopefully the race at the front is a little bit cleaner than the racing that we've seen deeper in the pack. At least I hope, and touch wood.
Touching all the wood around me on my desk right now. 7/10, 8/10, the gap between first and second. There are some takers down onto pit lane. We're within the pit window to get to the end without going over the maximum drive time, so 33 minutes left on the clock. And Laps at Racing Team, the Apex Misters have also come down after that incident. Next Level Racing, Shipsky Racing, the other cars that have made their pit stops. More takers this time around, though. Team Heiskensveld, the number 48, diving in with Altitude Esports. Mark Fletcher jumping into the 111. But there's been an incident for Stefan Schlacker in the 32. What's happened to Solar Vision Racing here was looking like another good result. It might be another self-inflicted incident. It looks like the 32 has done this all on their own, Connery, through our very favorite corner on the track.
Actually, it's not the grass. He actually lost the car before he even hit the grass and the dirt. So, wanting to swap end on entry. Not the first time that we've seen a driver have problems with the corner entry here. I'm wondering if he tapped the grass on the end. No, he was still all 4 tires on the grey stuff. The car just did not want to keep pointed in the right direction, and just the weight shifts and gets very light at the rear end, and the Audi decides to point in the wrong direction.
What else has happened? There's been a few other incidents that I'm noting on my timing screen. There you'll see Next Level Racing going deep. That's not the one that I've been most curious about. What's happened here for Shipsky Racing? Thomas Hamritzek has just gotten into the car. And okay, similar issue there as well. So a few cars just coming out of the pit lane in both cases. Drivers trying to get up to speed themselves, and they'll be hoping to get a little bit better as the run goes on. More takers down onto pit lane now. You see Solar Vision Racing down on the lane. Stefan Schlacker going to hand it over to his teammate. We'll see what happens, though, at the front of your field, because Ovando and Riedmuller continue to pound around. And I mentioned this a few times, Connery. You might not always expect to have your fastest drivers starting the race. Sometimes you want your fastest drivers ending the race. However, there is that additional complication of the order gets flipped for race number 2, so your fastest driver might start this one, but they may end race number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, we're having a look at the battle for P3 at the moment. Mag Performance versus RSR in the BMW and, of course, the Audi. The Audi trying to defend from the BMW. About half a second between those two as they head their way through the Melbourne hairpin, of course. So we are expecting maybe a couple of front runners this time around to head their way down on towards the pit lane to get their one and only scheduled stop done. Neither of these two head their way in just yet, but we've had about, I would say, 10 or 15 cars already come down in. at this stage of the race. But as we get towards that halfway point, I think we'll have a bit of a pit party in just a couple of moments' time.
So 30 seconds from reaching the halfway point in the race. We'll see what happens in terms of the front-running pit stops. You've got a few more takers down onto the lane this time around. The likes of Quasar Sim Racing, Pro Driver, the Apex Missers number 186 has joined them down on the pit lane as well. Taking a look at some of the cars who are back out on track as well. Alexander Walton has gotten into the number 32 for Solar Vision Racing. I mixed up, I think, the number 14, where Nick Madsen should be getting behind the wheel of the Mag Performance Audi in just a few moments' time. Take a look, though, back at the battle for your lead. Are either of these drivers coming down onto pit lane this time around? They've got a few more laps, Connery, to come down, but they are approaching some lap traffic here. You'll see one of the FPP Ferraris in front of Evander right now. Might be an opportunity for Riedmuller to jump down and avoid some of the traffic.
Yeah, it could be the plan here due to the amount of instance that we've had, and of course the pit stop cycle being in effect with a couple of the early stoppers. The traffic is going to be a slight problem perhaps, especially with a bunch of cars coming off the pit lane now, but I think both these leading cars have been able to get out before they get impeded by any cars coming off the pit lane, but they'll still have to deal with what is the NJB Performance car that's currently ahead of them at the moment. It looks like we've had yet more instance out there. The Apex Missers 185 having a bit of a problem, it seems. It looks like all on their own, just dropped on the entry to the corner once again. So not sure whether we have some issues with rear locking on some of these cars, but it seems like they're just completely and utterly unstable on the entries to the corners. Maybe the damage probably isn't helping, let's just say that. Though.
Well, we ride on board, and just keep a listen out if you're listening, because he blows the engine. I think he manages to do this on the downshift as well, just trying to slow the car down with the engine braking.
The traffic coming.
And with traffic coming as well, they all had to check up. We'll see if we could get another look at this incident down into the last corner. It blows the engine, spins the car, and then blocks the track for the number 185. Not being a day to remember for the Apex Missers. There you can see the puff of smoke. The Lapset Racing Ferrari has to stop dead in its track, and here comes the rest of the cars. Just, oh my word, I feel so bad for that Lapset Racing Ferrari. That was just stopped. Agonizing wait there for that Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really only one of the only options they could have gone for. So they'll just have to hemorrhage those positions and take that one on the chin somewhat. But as you can see, there we go. Race leaders down on towards the pit lane for their scheduled stop. RSR by G Performance in first. Then you have Team Heusingfeld heading their way in as well. So it's the battle of the pit crews here between these two, and if Team Heusingfeld have been able to save that little bit more fuel, maybe, just maybe, they'll get the jump in the pit stop here, as they'll just wait for the rest of that fuel to go in. There's even a car that's taken tires there as well. They both, of course, have to take the driver change as well. So Matty Stork Hoogsfeldt behind the wheel of the Team Heusingfeld car, Michael Strogbauer behind the wheel of the number 55 RSR car that was in the lead coming down on towards the pit lane, but will he lead off at the pit lane? That's the question.
And interesting to note, number 14, Mag Performance, has stayed out. Order stays the same coming out of pit lane, though. And Strogbauer is going to lead from Hulsfeld as they get up to racing speed once again. I don't think either of these guys took tires, Connery, about the same time in the pit box as well. So no strategy games being played. It's now all up to the number 78 to make this happen on track.
Yep, just 31 seconds apiece. Although Team Heusingfeld did have the much better stationary time there, but their lane time was actually worse. So it's all about getting stopped for those yellow cones and getting up to speed as quickly as possible coming out the pit lane. But let's have a look at what happened to the Apex Missers. Oh, okay. That Audi might be taking a trip to the stewards room after this.
Take another look at this replay on board with Alexander Walton, who has just gotten behind the wheel of the 32. And for a team that was feeling quite aggrieved, I think, by being punted out of race number 1 in Silverstone from the lead, they won't be too happy with that one. A slight mistake in the braking zone, and like you say, trip to the stewards incoming for them, I'm sure. But let's jump back to live pictures once again. Schlax is down on pit lane, so he will be handing the car over to Nick Madsen. Up into the pit box he goes. Is he going to take any tires? It doesn't look as though that car is taking tires this time around. We'll jump back, though, to the net lead battle, because 16 seconds was the gap between the number 55 and the 14 coming down into pit lane. So expecting Schlax to, or rather Madsen, to come out considerably behind these two drivers. The battle continues to go on as they cross the start-finish line once again. Madsen still up in the box getting fuel as well, so he's going to drop a long way down the order coming out of the pit lane right now. Let's take a look at an incident that's happened as well while we were watching this battle as they crossed the start-finish line. It was for Quasar Sim Racing coming through turn number 1, and for Richard Small, a little trip to the gravel there, and fortunately didn't affect his chances too much, I would say, Connery.
Yeah, already hemorrhaged too many positions, as we'll get the replay up on board on the roof cam on the way down towards Redgate. On the brakes into there, and again it's an issue on the edges of the corner. Just car not settled whatsoever, not gripping up, and the rear end wants to just come around. And we've seen so many issues like that here in this race today. We'll probably see more of it in the second race as well, as drivers try to drive a little bit more aggressively than we've seen already to try and gain positions after the reverse grid. But look at this, Alpha P3 out there on circuit, Mag Performance versus RSR. And RSR really handling the back of the Audi in their BMW, looking towards the outside, coming through the first part of the chicane, but they just have to duck back in line. Not really a massive overtaking opportunity there, unless you're optimistic, and not good enough of a run down in towards the Melbourne hairpin either to make anything happen coming through here. They try to hook their way on the inside and try and get the power down early, but not able to gain any sort of advantage on the way into the final corner.
And Madsen is just completing his first lap out on track, so tires still coming up into their peak operating window. And for the number 56 behind, Oscar Coper currently got into that car just a few laps ago. He's got one more lap underneath him than Madsen in front, so those tires a little bit up to temperature more, and he will be feeling the intensity of the race that much more. There's also a great battle, by the way, going on for P number 9 between the sister team Heiskebel number 48 and Altitude Esports and Mark Fletcher. Down the inside, the 48 goes through the last corner. The Ferrari's going to try and do an undercut. Not going to work, though, as they head down across the start-finish line. Team Heiskebel back up into P number 9, and with Solar Vision Racing in front of these drivers, the opportunity potentially to jump some more positions in the post-race, with post-race penalties expected to come down in a number of incidents.
We might want to have a look at the race lead in just a couple of moments, because Team Heiskebel very much all over the back of the leading RSR car now, and they're really giving them a big issue. Big Audi in the rear view and wing mirrors as far as that BMW is concerned, trying to hold on to the race lead. There's a little bit of traffic ahead of these guys on number 11 as the RSR car pushes very, very wide, coming on the exit of the final corner. Once again on board with Team Heiskebel, but it doesn't seem that Audi has quite the straight line speed advantage that the BMW has, and the BMW is going to be leveraging that one all the way to try and cover off these moves into heavy braking zones. But the traffic might play another factor here.
I think that's the .exe McLaren, the sole fire-breathing McLaren in our field. Yes, you can see the flames coming off the back of that car as RSR Performance is going to get all sorts of checked up. What's going to happen here? The McLaren holds the inside. They're going to go side by side. Is the Audi going to be able to make it work? No, RSR around the outside finally gets past the lap traffic, but this battle is starting to heat up just a little bit. And I'm wondering here, Connery, I mentioned sometimes your second driver is a little bit quicker than your first driver. It does look as though Hulsfeld is looking very rapid. We don't always like to use iRating up here in the commentary booth as an indicator of performance, but Team Heiskebel has 6,000 iRating currently behind the wheel. Strogbauer has had some very impressive runs in this GT Sprint Series so far, but 3,400 iRating, clearly not as experienced overall in the iRacing service.
Yeah, that could be the difference between these two. Bit of a cleaner line from Hulsfeld that time in through the Melbourne hairpin, as the RSR car seemingly undecided about what sort of line it wants to take through that very slow speed right-hander. But in through the left now, you can see the different driving styles coming out from these two drivers. The RSR car really wanting to push wide on every single one of these corners, but the Audi just seems fine coming shallow off the corners and is still able to keep up with the BMW. So it's just a difference in how you drive these two cars here.
The Audi is known for being a bit more nimble, a bit more agile through the corners, and I think we're starting to see that. The car looks very composed on the change of direction. All the weight transfer looks very, very balanced. Take a look at the BMW in front. Slinging that car a little bit more is Strogbauer, trying to muscle the car around the corners and use the grunt down the straightaways, get back down under half a second out front. So we saw this in the first portion of the race. The number 78 able to get close, not really able to get anything done. that opportunity in traffic presented itself. Not really something that I'm sure the number 78 would have wanted to force a move in that situation. We talk about race control being a factor. I'm sure the number 78 wants to get this all done out on track. There is an issue, by the way, for the FBP Racing number 458. They're off into the gravel, and I think that's at Coppice coming back down onto the back straightaway.
Yeah, absolutely. So trying to get back going in the 488 GT3, as their car number is the 458, but yeah, just dropping it through the corner once again. A lot of drivers, a lot of teams having problems with the entry to some of these corners, and the back end wanting to come around on them, but looking back towards your leaders for the moment. So there's also a battle between MAG Performance Racing and RSR as well. So RSR basically involved in two separate battles here, one where they're ahead and one where they are behind. So that's how you keep track of them there. It's Audi versus BMW in both of them, but MAG trying to hold on to this final podium spot for the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And the number 56 that currently stands in 4th position out on track leads the championship standings after race weekend number 1. Sister car, the number 55, was in 2nd, so I mean, it's still looking pretty good for the RSR team as we watch Coper trying to chase down the 14 in front of him. There has been an off for the number 72 car. That's the Awesome Motorsport Group. That was just behind that incident that we saw with the FBP Ferrari. There you see the 458 making its way back around. The number 72 will take a replay of this down into the old hairpin, loses it very early, and that Ford must be feeling pretty lucky right now, because that Ford is 12 laps down, Connery. It's not had much luck in this race. It would have been a very typical thing if it had just come back and hit them.
But yeah, possibly. I wouldn't have put it in that stark terms, but there we go. But MAG Performance, back to this battle for the final podium spot. Dealing with the pressure quite well that RSR is piling onto the back of them, all things considered. Oscar Paper has been attempting to make that BMW look very threatening behind the Audi, but hasn't been able to scare his opponent offline for the moment. But can very much all change. Same with the battle for the race lead as well. So we're in a little bit of a calm portion of the race, and I know as a commentator how risky it is to say that, since I've had experience of saying it's a calm race and everything going a bit crazy. But for the moment, we're just having to hope that's not the case. Meanwhile, further back in the pack, Altitude still trying to get past the battle inside the top 10 here. That's the Quasar car that they're trying to get past, and looking to get the drive off the corner, sort of diamond off the final corner to get the speed coming down the pit straight here. Maybe able to make something happen down the inside at Redgate. The Ferrari's just going to stay in line. Now it's going to duck to the inside, and a big forceful move will get them the place.
And I think this was a needed move, because Team Heiskenveld, the number 48, we saw Jan Sentikowski make the move a little while ago. He's already pulled out a 4-second gap to Mark Fletcher in the 1-1-1. So Fletcher's got some time to try and catch up here. Sentikowski's hounding the back now at Alexander Walton, trying to get back up into the top 5. The gap for the race lead, by the way, traffic has broken it up. You can see there one of the laps at Racing Ferraris. Gap now just under 2 seconds. So the Audi has a lot of work to try and get back into this fight, but I think right now, Connery, it's fair to say that this Audi is looking much more composed, much more ready to push the limit, I would say. I think that gap is going to be back under about half a second in about 3 laps time. The question really is, what can the Audi do in terms of trying to make the move actually happen out on track?
Whoa, car off ahead of your leader, but it's well off the circuit. Team Oblivion, heavy impact with the tyre barrier directly in front of your leader, but fortunately, since the barriers are so far away from the actual live racetrack here, it doesn't bounce back into the racing line and take out those leaders. But Dylan Stone having a massive problem, 2 tyres in the dirt again, up over the curb, and that barrier has another visitor in this race.
I think this is actually, if I'm not mistaken, Connery, this is the barrier on the inside of the old hairpin. So first time that we've had someone come in through there and hit that little bit of track. Not sure. I think you might be right, actually. Nope, that's the same barrier. So, yep, the barrier is becoming a popular attraction on the track. It seems like a lot of cars like to just hang out there and get some service done, get a little bit of damage put onto the front of the bodywork. But we'll jump back then to the battle for the third and final podium position, because RSR by G Performance, the number 55, looking good out in front. Gap to Team Heiskensveld now 1.9 seconds, but Oscar Koper puts the pressure onto Nick Madsen. Madsen had that win taken away from him in the round number 1 at Silverstone, who'll be looking to try and get another podium position here to match what ended up being third place in race number 1. Slightly more difficult race number 2 starting from the back, but that's the thing that we must start to think about now, Connery. 15 minutes to go, so just a quarter of this race left as we watch third and fourth make their way around lap traffic. That's the number 411 Estate Coffee Company. But reverse grid race in this is about to come up right after this, and if you're RSR by G Performance, it's been going well, definitely, but you saw all of that chaos in the race number 1 start. It's looking very interesting for race number 2 and how many of these teams are going to be looking to approach the first few laps of the race.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty tricky one indeed, especially due to some of the teams that start at the very front of that one. They haven't, well, DNF from the, well, they've DNF from this race. Meanwhile, Quasar down the inside of one of the BMWs at the hairpin, trying to again recover something from this race, and they're able to get the pass done. BMW come back at them though. That's the number 99 car of the Roaring Chicken Nuggets. As I've said, this is my favorite team name in the whole sim racing universe here. But Nick Stoop behind the wheel of the car. You can even make more memes out of that and call him Nick Stop. But he's certainly not going to stop harassing the back of this Ferrari down into Redgate, but he doesn't seem to have the speed to be able to challenge.
Yeah, and you look at the front of that car as well. Lots of damage for Roaring Chicken Nuggets in their number 99 BMW. They'll, again, be hoping for some better luck in round number 2, coming up just on the other side of a commercial break once we finish this race number 1. Someone, by the way, who's really on a charge and going to be starting race number 2 for the number 48, Jan Sentikowski. The strongest drivers in today's field in GT3 action. 8th position and trying to get up onto the back of Alexander Walton, who we did see that incident with one of the Apex Missers BMW. We're expecting the 32 to potentially have a penalty coming down on them, potentially post-race to be applied. But right now, Walton trying to defend from Sentikowski. Sentikowski's just going to fall in line as they head through turn number 1 and now through the tricky section down into the old hairpin. It's good to see the Team Heiskensveld cars having a better run of it this time around. We talk about being able to read a rule book. It's hopefully they'll have done that this time around. Hopefully they don't mind me saying that as well, Connery, because I think it's fair to say that the Heiskensveld guys have had a bit of a rough start to IVRA competitions. You think back to IVRA Endurance, where they jumped the start leading GTE Pro. They got pole position and then jumped the start, had a drive-through penalty to serve within 3 laps. I mean, that summed up their 12 hours basically in 1 lap. Then you think of IVRA Club Sport, where they had similar rules issues, catching them out in the pit lane. And initial round of the IVRA GT Sprint Series, that reverse grid race, the round number 2, they forgot how the procedure worked and got an incredibly long penalty as a result of starting out front instead of at the back. So good to see the Heiskensveld team doing a little bit better this time around.
Yeah, you have to read the rules. You have to make sure that you're up to date. And Solar Vision Racing in this battle trying to keep Team Heiskensveld behind them for the moment. A bit of a defensive move in through the hairpin. I'm seeing the 17 car yellow flag spun on circuit. That's laps at racing team number 17. Actually has to Austin Powers it and try and get back onto the racing surface. I'm not sure if this is involving someone else. They were pretty close behind the Quasar Sim Racing team, but no contact between the two of them, it seems, as they just drop it off the corner.
Yeah, I'll take an on-board look at this one, riding on board with Martin Hobson. This is the car that had to stop on track for that car that was spun around in the last corner. They're down in 28th place. Has not been a fun race for them here. You'll see using all the curb on the right-hand side of the track, just bouncing the car a little bit too much. The car didn't like that too much and facing the wrong direction, unfortunately, for Laps at Racing Team, who they have 3 cars entered in this series, but the best one of them currently runs in 10th position, so not the type of day they would have been wanting. But look at this, battle up on your screen once again, side by side for 3rd place, the final podium position. And RSR gets pushed off into the grass by Mag Performance. Number 14, Nick Madsen. We'll take a look at that replay, but the action for this 3rd and final podium position really starting to heat up with 10 minutes still left on the clock.
Yeah, well, trying to bargain for more space than he needed, and eventually does get forced off by that Audi, is that door was always going to close coming off the corner. We can see the onboards with the RSR car coming through here, just getting squeezed a little, and just eased towards the outside there onto the grass. But of course, stewards will be looking at every single instant, no matter how long it takes them in this race. And you can just see there just a slight bit of contact, coaxing that BMW onto the curb and onto the grass. But the most important thing is that they keep going and don't find that tyre barrier on the outside.
Gap now up to 1.1 seconds, so Cooper still has a chance here with 10 minutes still to go. And you know, looking at that one, Connery, it seems very much like a racing incident. It all depends on how you want to see your cars fighting, I guess, because you know, there were a few races happening in the real world today, thinking of Formula 1, for example. In Formula 1, well, the
Don't
Audi
spoil things.
I haven't watched the race, so I'm not trying to spoil it for anyone, including myself, but but Nick Madsen there in the F1 community would have had the right to do exactly what he did there, lean on the RSR car just a little bit more. But if you think about this, I think in sports car terms, I think we always like to see side-by-side battling, and we don't mind that car-to-car, door-to-door contact sometimes as well. So be interesting to see how the stewards view it. To me, that probably comes down as a racing incident, but half a second is the gap now. Cooper clearly not too happy about that incident.
I mean, there've been some more egregious moves throughout this race from some other teams, so that, in comparison to what we've seen here in this race one, is probably going to be called a racing incident, especially considering the amount that has happened over the course of this race. And, you know, the benefit of those cars keeping things together is that we get to continue on this battle to see if RSR can get past on pace instead of hoping that a penalty goes the way of that Audi of Mag Performance. So that's what we want to see. We want to see the side-by-side racing, not things decided inside the stewards' room, because that's boring.
Absolutely, and while this battle continues to rage on, let's quickly just take a look then at the battle for the race lead. The gap's still 1.7 seconds. The pace has equaled out just a little bit there. You'll see the lap gaps trading times back and forth as they make their way through traffic. So right now, not much in it. Let's jump back though. Battle third and fourth as Cooper closes in once again as they head back in to that same passing zone down at the Melbourne Hairpin. Is he going to have another look this time around? Nothing doing, but you see the fire-breathing McLaren right in front of them. Is there going to be another issue? Potentially the McLaren having to deal with side-by-side lap traffic making their way past him down into the last corner. Light flashing on the number 14 machine as the number 56 closes up on the rear end of the number 14. The lights flashing once again down the start-finish straight, but the McLaren's not moving out of the way. The number 14 still has all of that fire in front of him. Gap now just 0.2 of a second, Connery. It's getting very, very close as the McLaren finally runs a little bit wide at turn one, but the BMW's got a nice run down in towards the old hairpin.
Running on board with Cooper now as they head down in through the corner curves and now hit the brakes in towards the fast right, the old hairpin. Careful of the exit here as some drivers have unfortunately found out over the course of this race. If you run right through there, you're going to find the barrier on the inside. But here comes Cooper then trying to find a line around the outside at turn 7 of McLean's. The Audi having to tap the brakes on the inside to avoid running wide into the side of the BMW, trying to squeeze them on the entry into Coppice corner now. Big amount of oversteer from Cooper on the exit, coming through the middle of the corner, and can't quite find the speed off the exit, but he'll have another opportunity here as he goes back to driver's right-hand side to try and make things happen. It's battle of late breakers in towards the chicane, and Cooper will give the Audi the space to work with, so Mag Performance stay ahead after a big challenge from RSR.
I do not think the battle is over just yet. Cooper really looks up for this one. And that was just a test opportunity, getting a little bit loose and squirrely off the exit of the Melbourne hairpin. It's not really a passing zone down in towards the S's, that chicane that takes you in towards the two hairpins that we're running in today's configuration of Donington Park. But we've already seen one car try to make it work. Didn't go their way, if you remember correctly, with the Apex Missers, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. YouTube chat, by the way, is popping off as per normal. Do join the rest of our RaceBot community in watching today's broadcast on the iRacing Esports Network. We've got Race Control in there today talking about how busy they are going to be at the end of this one. Nick Stoop, by the way, in the Roaring Chickens Nuggets machine has had an issue. Let's go take a look at a replay here.
Will happen again. We should start a new drinking game. Of course, please drink responsibly, but every time a barrier hits the wall on the inside there, take a shot, you probably get done pretty quickly. But then again, of course, we cannot condone such things.
Absolutely not. And if David Haynes was here, Connery, I mean, I think he'd be telling you off. I got told off for telling a story about during Petit Le Mans how some of the Craig Setup Shop community were playing a drinking game with the Radio Show Limited crew, and I got told off for that. I can't imagine what David Haynes would say for you, but jump back to live pictures with a battle for 5th place now, but we must point out that the number 58 in front of the number 199 N-Race Esports car, we're still expecting a penalty to come down for Vincent Lemarchand at some point. They jumped the start pretty badly, if you remember as well, Connery, and talk about reading the rules. That's something that the 58 crew will be having a pretty frank discussion, I think, about come the end of this one.
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't make the same mistake, or no other driver makes the same mistake in race number 2. But look how close N-Race Esports are trying to follow through Goddard's the final corner as they cross the line with 5 minutes to go. Looking like it's going to be around about 4 laps to go after this point. So that's around about the margin that we're expecting here. Pro Driver Esports trying to hold on to 5th place. They probably won't keep it by the time the end of the race arrives and the stewards have gone through and decided that their jump start warrants a penalty. But it's still worth fighting, at least just for the time.
Well, 4 minutes to go down the inside for the number 56 as he can get 3rd position. He forces the number 14 out off into the grass. Lights are flashing, but up into 3rd place for Oscar Copa. What a move that was. And I was just about to say the battle for 3rd and 1st starting to heat up. Now RSR Performance, the number 56, is going to look to try and pull away from Nick Madsen behind them. That was a fair move, and let's take a replay of that one, Connery. An opportunistic move, and they got the move done.
Half an hour on the battle for the race lead because that's closing in right now. But look at that, RSR authoritative down the inside. A bit of an error by the Audi to go so deep into the corner as well. And a bit of a cheeky squeeze on the exit of the corner, but I think all is fair in that one. You can see the frustration, though, from the Audi behind. Just thinking that was a bit too overzealous, trying to push them out of the bounds of the circuit. But at least in that one, I don't think that RSR have to be too worried about the stewards there. But 3.5 minutes across the line, still this battle for P3 and still that battle for P1 potentially might be a thing because the gap has come down due to RSR having to deal with a huge amount of traffic, and Huizinga's just able to stick behind in this one. If RSR aren't able to get by that Quasar car up in towards Corpus now, it might cause them a bit more of a problem. They're still stuck behind. Huizinga's still there looming just over half a second behind, and if RSR can't get by quickly, then this is completely demolished their lead. They're going to have to stay behind for the chicane as well.
Traffic giveth and traffic taketh. The gap down just below half a second now as Team Huizinga throws it through the chicane at the S's down in towards the Melbourne hairpin. RSR still stuck behind 2 lapped cars in front of them now as we continue to ride on board with the number 78. That's one of the Quasar Sim Racing Ferraris that's in front of them, and I think that's also the NJB Audi, that second car in the line that these guys are going to have to make their way around. But here comes the charge from the number 78 all the way up to the back, and they're still stuck behind the lap traffic, Connery. 2 laps to go, I do believe. This should be an exciting one to the line.
Yeah, looks like we're going to get around about 2 laps here, although it's going to be close because they're doing 125s, or 127s, excuse me, in terms of lap time. So I think it's going to end up being 2 laps regardless anyway, but let's just have a look to see how this one progresses then, because RSR still stuck behind the lap traffic. They're still stuck behind the Quasar car coming through the old hairpin. To be fair, Quasar are able to keep up with the pace of these leaders. They're not holding up too drastically here, but Strogbow really wants to get by at the moment because the more time he spends behind here, the more chances that Team Huizinga are going to be able to make their way by. There's laps that Racing Team went straight out into the grass to let the leaders by. We're not expecting Quasar to do something so drastic, but they're certainly not helping the RSR car at the moment. And they're thinking, well, we don't have to let you by. We're almost as fast as you. We're just going to stay ahead. And now, look at that good run from the Audi coming through the chicane. Team Huizinga are going to look down towards the inside for the race lead, up in towards the Melbourne's hairpin. Turn 11. They go deep on the brakes down the inside. Husfeldt trying to capitalize on the opportunity, and the lap traffic has worked out in his favor as he gets the Team Huizinga car to the race lead.
It's not over yet. 1 more lap still to go. RSR sends it deep into that last corner, getting right up behind the number 78 as they go across the start-finish line for the penultimate time. Is lap traffic still going to have a factor to play in this race? They are battling 16th and 17th, by the way. That's why they do not want to give up position. That is also point and grid order for those two cars in front, so there's a lot on the line for them. But the number 78 trying to hang on. The grunt of the BMW pulls it down the hill. They head in towards the old hairpin. They're slowly catching those lapped cars. This might be another factor where a good run through the chicane can set up everything for one of these cars. Lights flashing on the Heiskenveld cars. They head in towards turn number 6. This is where we saw a move just a moment ago. The RSR car trying to set something up on the over-under. Not going to happen there. He takes a look to the inside and turns the number 78. Team Heiskenveld car is around. They make further contact because the number 78 with a fantastic save, able to hold on to the car. But I think that might be the end of the battle now. I think the number 55 might just call this one quits and let the number 78 have this one. So we head down through the S's. They don't want to get the race control involved anymore, but a good run for the BMW as Heiskenveld looks defensive all the way to the inside. This is what we saw just a lap ago, deep on the brakes for the number 78. This time it's the number 55 trying to force the action, but not able to make anything happen through Melbourne. Is it going to happen through Goddard's? Once again, Heiskenveld all the way to the inside. RSR is going to try and sweep around the corner, maybe do an under-over here. Indeed, they're looking for the undercut, but Heiskenveld does not give that to them. Fantastic defensive driving, and for the number 78 car, redemption and a win here in the IVRA GT Sprint Series.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant stuff there from Team Heiskenveld. Well, if you're handed a race on a silver platter, you still got to eat the food, and that's exactly what they did there. To be able to get past this battle for P3 still going on at the moment, and RSR able to come across the line for P3 as well. So P2, P3 for them after a good result for their team, but they would have so desperately wanted that race win at the end of the day, but it was robbed from them by Team Heiskenveld as they will get to the top step of the podium for race number 1.
And we'll try and get a replay of that last lap in just a few moments' time while we're watching some of the final battles happening out on track, because that contact, Connery, was assisted by the technical difficulties of online internet racing. We don't like using the netcode word here on RaceBot TV, but there was a little bit of netcode between the two cars. That subsequent contact between them as well was only there because the number 78 had a fantastic save to control that car as the rear end started to step out as we watched 12th and 13th come across the line. But you know, if you're the number 55 car, Michael Strohbauer, you must not be too happy about how lap traffic raced you there.
Well, blue flags are informational only, of course, so it's the same for everyone, as Kimi would say. And Team Heiskenveld very much capitalizing on that fact there as they'll get themselves through the final corner on this cool-down lap and straight down on towards pit lane. I would have loved to see a couple of donuts from them, but maybe it's a little bit too complicated just to turn off the traction control to be able to do that. But Team Heiskenveld, still a well-deserved race win, don't get me wrong. You know, even though that maybe a couple of laps from the end there with that 2-second gap they might have thought that the race was getting a little bit too far away from them. Here's the move that sealed the deal, perhaps, with the Audi down the inside at the hairpin and getting a fantastic launch off the corner as well. So planted that Audi is coming off these corners, and no problems at all with any sort of oversteer coming off of that one. You can see the BMW driving in deep through the final corner and trying to run him close, but the Heiskenveld Audi is just so strong, and very well done to hold on to the car at the end of this lap as well, despite the big old slide.
I tell you what, let's jump on board then with number 55 car as they tried to chase down the number 78 in front. This is the last lap of the race. Down in towards the old hairpin they go. The BMW trying to use that grunt, try and pull as close as they can. This is where they caught a little bit of that lap traffic. The battle in front, just checking up the leaders a tiny bit, and that's what set up the contact that you're about to see up on your screen through Coppice. So number 78 Audi tries to look for a move past the cars in front, gets a little bit stuck, then the BMW looks to the inside, just gets a little bit too optimistic there, and a fantastic save by the number 78 before the second contact comes and whacks him in the rear, and able to hold on to that. And I think that ultimately Connery, did end up being the pivotal race moment. If the RSR car had a bit of better opportunity to set up this move down in through the chicane, you see here they get a good run, but that contact really didn't put them in a good spot to try and get the run down into Melbourne here.
Yeah, maybe a little bit down on power in that BMW. Of course, being front engines, you know, any contact towards the front of that car, especially with that big shunt into the rear of the Audi, is going to cause them a bit of a problem. But they still had enough in the tank to be able to challenge, at least attempt around the outside here at Goddard's, looking for the up and under. You can just see the body language of that BMW, knew what they were trying to go for, but they just didn't have the traction through the middle of the corner to be able to do so. Huizenfeld able to take the race win.
So let's take a look then at the race results. The Team Huizenfeld number 78 car takes the win by just 0.3 of a second. But for RSR by G Performance, a double podium continuing on. Very strong run in round number 1 from Silverstone. The MAG Performance Sim Racing team, the number 14, slots in just behind them with N-Race Esports. Pro Driver Esports, the number 58. That's the car that jumped the start. And we are wondering what the penalty will be for them. Not if that will be a penalty, but how big is the penalty going to be for the 58 car. The sister car for the number 78, the Team Huizenfeld 48 car, comes in 7th. Jan Sentikowski charging back through the field after he jumped in. Solar Vision Racing, Alexander Walton potentially looking at a penalty, with Altitude Esports and Laps at Racing Team 235 rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, we gotta say these results are very provisional at this point, due to the amount of incidents that we've had. See the Apex Misses 186, MP11, Quasar Sim Racing P12, Maya Sim Speed Performance MP13, Pro Driver Esports Black P14, and you see those teams and drivers further down the order. Laps at Racing having a bit of a mare here today, all things considered. It seems like their cars were involved in a lot of the incidents here today. Roaring Chicken Nuggets, like I said, is kind of my new favorite team at this point. They get themselves inside of the top 20 despite being that single lap down. And there are a lot of teams and a lot of drivers laps down here, are you know?
And we must say, you only have to complete 70% of the laps to be classified in the order and be inserted into the reverse grid race. Take a look at the rest of the finishers. .exe and their McLaren, 21st. FBP, the 488. Awesome Motorsport Group, number 72 in 23rd. Estate Coffee Company, having a bit of a better run than they did last time out. We saw a lot of replays of them from Silverstone. Happy to say we didn't have them on the broadcast too much this time around. Shipsky Racing, the 222 in 25th position. NJB, number 73326 for the last car, 1 lap down. The FBP 458. Then look at the Laps at Racing team number 17, which really did not enjoy today's race number 1 at all. And some cars finishing extra laps down. Next Level Racing, GT3, Altitude Esports, the number 23. The CXR Project Black Ford 383 down 12 laps. Team Oblivion Racing down 13 laps as well. The Apex Missers, the 185 down 22 laps. And the newcomers to the series, HM Engineering, going to be starting from the rear of race number 2. So we do have a few people standing by for post-race interviews, post-race coverage of round number 3 from Donington Park for the IVRA GT Sprint Series about to begin. But Connery, let's start then with the Team Huizenfeld winner, and you're standing by with Mats Halsved.
Yep, I absolutely am. Mats, what a crazy final couple of laps to that race, and a crazy final lap, all things considered, as well. You're able to make the pass on that on the RSR car coming on the second to last lap, but you had quite a task ahead of you to hold on to the race lead throughout the final lap. Just take me through exactly what happened there.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it was really intense in the last 3 or 4 laps. Yeah, first I thought the race is over because the RSR BMW was already 2 seconds ahead. But then, yeah, suddenly lots of traffic was ahead of us, and they were also fighting for position. And so I could close the gap, and then after a little mistake by the BMW, I could pass that car into the hairpin. Yeah, and then I had the problem with the traffic. Couldn't create a gap, and yeah, I had to defend my position quite aggressive, and yeah, nevertheless it was enough, and I'm super happy that we could take our second win of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one in the books for you guys. On that final lap, you had a little bit of contact with the other car coming through the sort of coming up towards the final sector of the lap. Of course, you were the car ahead. You got tagged around a little bit, and you were able to hold on to the car as it was sliding through turn 8. That must have been a heart in mouth moment for you guys.
Yeah, of course. It was, as I said, a quite aggressive defense of me, but yeah, I think for the lead that's okay. And yeah, it was really difficult to stay in front.
Yeah, very difficult indeed, as it was, well, of course you didn't see a lot of the other action throughout the field here today. It seemed like there was pretty major problems behind where you guys started. Is the track particularly tricky here in these cars, especially where there's not a lot of room for error, and if you dip 2 tires into the grass, you can very much lose control of the car. How is it for you guys? Because I did notice that Audi did seem pretty planted and pretty stable.
Yeah, honestly, I was not going flat out every lap because yeah, the Audi is also a bit twitchy really twitchy at some corners. I think the problem also is that it's really difficult to overtake in Donington, and when you try to overtake, the other car has to let you through almost, because otherwise it will come to a crash, and that's, I think, another problem here. But it also shows that close racing is difficult, but on the other hand, it's possible to race here at Donington.
And one final question, because you finished in the lead of this race, you'll be at the very back of the grid when it comes to race 2 because of the reverse grid. Is there any plan for you guys, or are you just going to take the race as it comes?
Stay out of trouble.
Yeah, probably the best plan considering what we saw in the mid-pack here today. But thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck in race 2.
Thank you.
There we go. That was Max Husfeldt from Team Heusingfeld, number 78, who took the race win here in race 1 of this race meeting here, Arjuna. And, well, they're looking to try and keep out of trouble, like you said, in race 2, which is probably for the best.
Absolutely. And now we have a double interview standing by, because we've got the second and third place car representative, RSR by G Performance, getting a double podium position. However, we'll be talking to Oscar Koper, who was in the wheel of the number 56, and Anthony Pisano, not driving this time around for the number 55, but he is part of the crew. Delighted to have you guys both here. And Oscar, we'll start with you. It was an interesting last 15 minutes to that race there. What were you thinking about as you tried to chase down the number 14 in front of you and then finally got the move done?
Well, it was mainly just waiting for a mistake, because it's insanely difficult to overtake at Donington. Well, it was very tense. I was shaking all the time, so it was difficult to keep it all together. And it was one small mistake that gave me a gap, which I took gladly. And it was pretty rough defending from there, because he was still on me till the end of the race.
Well, you guys had some contact on a number of occasions there. And Anthony, a question for you. You come into this second round of the championship, or second race weekend, we should say, 1 and 2 in the championship. You now get the second and third position in race number 1. How would you be setting yourself up for this race number 2, where both cars are obviously going to be starting from the rear of the field? We saw a lot of action, and while you're not going to be competing today, you were part of yesterday's Club Sport race, where you saw just as much action on some of those race starts. So in terms of a driver approaching the next race, how exactly would you be thinking about it?
Control. 2 words, damage control.
Well, I guess you guys will kind of be hoping a little bit for some of the chaos we saw at the start of race number 1 to happen, and maybe you guys can get lucky from the rear of the field. But Oscar, another question for you then. In terms of this track. Where are some of the difficult places that you guys are finding in the BMW to battle with the Audis? Because we saw both you and your teammates struggling, I think, a bit in the slower stuff compared to the Audis, but you guys definitely have a bit more grunt down the straight, and we saw you really slinging that car through the corners, trying to get every ounce of performance that you could from it.
Yeah, the Audi is obviously more agile in the slower corners, so we have to maximize our exits to not be a target on the next corner out of the slow corners.
Got it. Well, before we head over into race number 2, you, Oscar, have to go get ready to start that race as well and get ready to finish the qualifying process for that. Anyone you'd like to shout out from your team?
Well, I'd like to shout out our sponsor, G Performance, who made this championship possible for us. Yeah, my teammate Jan, who drove a fantastic first stint.
Awesome. And Michael, Anthony, before we let you go as well, obviously not competing today, but you were busy yesterday with IVRA competitions. We're going to see you back in the car for Daytona in the beginning of December?
Yeah, I'll be in the car for Daytona for sure.
Awesome. Well, enjoy watching the rest of race number 2. I hope it's as exciting as race number 1 was. And good luck, Oscar, in as you try and make your way through the field.
Thank you very much.
So that was Oscar Koper and Anthony Pisano representing the RSR by G Performance team. And, well, Connery, it's time to finally take just a little bit of a breath. Race number 1 from race weekend number 2 is done. We get a short 10-minute break or so, and then we'll be back with coverage from race number 2, which is going to be a reverse grid race, and therefore bringing a lot of entertainment to the iRacing Esports Network.
Yeah, absolutely. So you gotta hold on to your hats when it comes comes to that race start, because it's going to be very, very, very interesting indeed. I can't wait for it. It's going to be who can part the Red Sea the best.
Or in the case of that race number 1 start, who can avoid the seas parting in front of them and all the checkups that were happening. You take a look at the schedule up on your screen. We've just finished the 3rd round out of 12. We're working our way through this championship. It feels like just yesterday I was sitting next to Sumil Arora at Silverstone as we were calling the action from race number 1. Take a look also at the event format. Just a reminder, reverse grid for race number 2. We do have a 40-minute gap between race number 1 and race number 2. However, with our post-race coverage, talking to some of the podium finishers, that gap only going to be down to a few minutes. Connor Maddock and myself will take a short moment just to catch our breath after what is a much-needed break after the action in race number 1, and we'll be right back with race number 2. Connery, I mean, given what we saw there in race number 1, I think this reverse grid race, if we can avoid some of the start incidents, might prove to be a very entertaining race. Especially when you consider that the Silverstone reverse grid race was one of the most crazy races I've had the pleasure of calling on RaceBot TV.
Well, if the first race is anything to go by, I think you're hoping for a very unlikely event to happen. So I think there's going to be a lot of attrition as far as this next race is concerned. That's not unexpected when it comes to a reverse grid, but due to the trend that we've seen throughout the racing here today, it's going to be very, very interesting, and you can see possibly there might be a surprise winner at the end of the day. Maybe someone from the mid-pack or even further back can find themselves in the right set of circumstances to be able to take the race win due to everything happening around them, which is going to be very interesting to see. And those teams that might be in that situation, they're certainly hoping that things will fall their way in the next race.
So race number 2 of this race weekend on the other side of this break. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. Joining me in the commentary booth is Connery Maddock. As a reminder, all of our TV cameras are available from trackcams22.com with some additional car cameras provided to us by our own Tyler Maxon. Head over to trackcams22 to see all of those details. Also, check out our live timing and scoring available at timing71.org. Our partners at Timing71 have provided us some great data analysis tools to be able to use. But we're going to take a short break, jump over into the next session, and we'll be right back with coverage from round number 4 in the IVRA GT Sprint Series. So one race done, one to go here in the IVRA GT Sprint Series race weekend number 2, live from Donington Park. Thank you for joining us here live on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceBot TV for today's coverage of the second race weekend in the IVRA GT Sprint Series. Thank you for joining myself, Arjuna Kankipati, alongside Connery Maddock, as we're about to get set for another 60 minutes of racing action. TV cameras, as always, available from Istvan Ballo and Track Cams 22. Additional car cameras are provided to us by Tyler Maxon, and live timing and scoring is available throughout today's broadcast on Timing 71. And Connery, one race down, one to go, like I say, but that first race was a very intriguing proposition, and now as we look ahead to another 60-minute race with the grid inverted, should be a very interesting proposition as some of these cars try to fight their way through the field.
Yep, absolutely, and of course, they have to go through the whole procedure here of trying to set themselves the correct starting grid here for the second race. Some teams and drivers decided that, well, they've gotten things a little bit wrong, so we'll have to see what happens in that instance, but this is going to be probably one of the more frantic starts that you'll ever get to see. I think it's probably fair to say in this one. I hope I'm not being disingenuous to anyone by saying that, but yeah, it's going to be... try your best to try and keep track of things. We'll do our best to try and tell you things, but it's going to be very tough.
100%. We saw action at the start of the last race with drivers missing the race start and going a little bit early. Take a look again at the track conditions. We started in the middle of the day, but since we're racing in virtual October and November, track temperatures down in 18 degrees Celsius, even though we're slightly later on in the day this time around in the virtual session. In the shadow of Castle Donington, the wind is fairly strong as well. Look at that, 18 kilometers gusting winds across the track. Mostly cloudy, so we may see a few just little bursts of sunshine trying to poke through the clouds and maybe heating up different portions of the track. But there you'll see top left portion of the screen. We've still got 30 seconds left in qualifying, and you alluded to it, Connery. We have a procedure here where in this 40-minute break between race 1 and 2, these drivers have to actually manually set a lap time that will form the starting grid. And last time out, it was Team Heiskenveld that made that mistake and went to the front of the grid with a normal lap time. They had to serve a penalty as a result. This time around, it looks like the 383 CXR Project Black has made that mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. So they will be... well, that's an infringement on the rules, so they'll be penalized for that. It does sort of slightly mess up the grid here for this one because FPB Racing, despite being pole position in this one, they're having to start on the outside position of the front row. So that's going to make things a little bit more sketchy coming down in towards turn 1 because they'll be on the outside.
Absolutely. So let's take a look then at the starting grid for today's race as the grid forms on the back straight away. CXR Project Black are going to line up in pole position, but they'll be down on pit lane in a few laps' time with a pit lane penalty. FBP Racing will be starting in position number 2. Next Level Racing would have been starting on row number 1. Instead, they're on row number 2 with a sister car to the 488, now in 4th position. Looking through the rest of your order, Lapset Racing Team, the number 17 with Martin Hobson, had a pretty awful run of luck at the end of race number 1. Shipsky Racing, the 222, starting in 6th place with a State Coffee Company and Awesome Motorsport Group on row number 4. Edge of the top 10, that's where you see the fire-breathing McLaren, the number 42 for .exe Esports. Connery's favorite team, the Roaring Chicken Nuggets, on the edge of the top 10 as well, with Archer Brother Esports and Lapset Racing Team, the number 11 car, on row number 6. Quasar Sim Racing. I'll get that right this time, Garrett. Garrett Thompson, one of the team members, told me I was saying that wrong. And then next to them, Team Vikings, the number 777. The French team, Xanity Motorsports, in 15th. With Pro Driver Esports Black, the number 24, in 16th place. Then we look at Mayor Sim Speed Performance. Team owner, Manuel Meyer, going to be racing there in the number 73. Quasar Sim Racing, number 26 and 18th. The Apex Missers, number 186 and 19th. With that third Lapset Racing car starting on the edge of the top 20. We'll scroll through the rest of the grid as well, because this is where some of the stronger runners are as the grid starts to pull off. Altitude Esports, number 111, with Solar Vision Racing next to them in 22nd place. The Team Heiskenveld, number 48, Jan Sentikowski, going to be on a charge. And next to him, Pro Driver Esports, the number 58. That's the one that jumped the start. N-Race Esports, the number 199, lining up in 25th place. Number 14, Nick Madsen, going to take control of MAG Performance Sim Racing from 26th. Oscar T. Coper, we spoke to him just a few moments ago. He'll be starting in the number 56 car. Next to him will be his teammate in the number 55. Last few cars you'll see the winner from race number 1, the number 78, alongside a lot of the cars that did not get classified in the race results, and they are going to be starting all the way down the order. But there you can see pace car lights are off as we head in towards the last corner. Field going to be left in control of the Ford of CXR Project Black, but it will be the FBP Racing 488 car. It's effectively on pole position as we await that Ford to dive down onto the pit lane for its penalty. But already N-Race Esports, sorry, that's Shipsky Racing, the 222 with a little bit of a jump start, poking its nose to the outside. As we dive down into turn number 1 in this reverse grid race for the very first time. They're going 3 and 4 wide in the background as well. So they all try and funnel their way in through. They're going very slowly as well, further back in the grid as well. All of this action as they work their way down into the old hairpin. Look at Solar Vision with a great start, it appears, on the outside. Looking now as well as RSRG Performance. That's number 56 car with a monster start, trying to jump up some positions. Already up to 24th as there's been some big problems for the Estate Coffee Company. The number 411 is around, and I think a few more cars as well.
Yeah, Lapsat Racing team number 11 also having a big issue. That was all on their own as they dropped the car coming in towards the old hairpin. Same with the Estate Coffee Co. as well. More problems out there right now as the 186 Apex misses, decides to go for a spin as well. Has had a shunt in the rear bumper as well. But apart from those incidents, I think we've had a marginally cleaner start than we had compared to race 1. And that is really saying something here. But here we go. The moves are being made further up the field, up inside the top 5, as it's a big old concertina effect coming through the Melbourne hairpin. Roaring Chicken Nuggets are in there. You got Sisby Racing as well, also doing very well. We got CXR Project Racing Black. They are going to soon head their way down towards pit lane, but meanwhile, a couple of cars further back in the shot, both the FPB Racing cars coming down in.
And I wonder if potentially penalties then for FBP Racing, both of these cars down onto the pit lane as well. This is because I'm just taking a look at the Discord server, Connery. Both of these cars messed up qualifying, so actually these cars have also done the same thing as CXR Project Black. So I wonder if we're going to be waiting to see more of these drive-through penalties. That CXR Project Black machine already up though to a 4-second advantage out front. Let's take a look then. Some of the replays on the start. It started off with Jason Barberena in the 411. Estate Coffee Company. He gets spun actually from behind. That's the Lapsat Racing car that Connery had just mentioned as well, also having issues. Let's take a look at this one in slow motion as the number 11 loses it early and then just clips the rear end of the 411.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of confusion further back in the pack with the cold tires as well. Lapsat Racing, please don't roll back across the circuit. Hold the brakes, please. Estate Coffee Company, they don't have to, as their trajectory is only going to go into the tyre barrier. But yeah, Lapsat Racing, please, 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 please hold the brakes. Otherwise, you're going to cause a huge amount of carnage behind. And you can see, there we go. Oh, well avoided, though. My word.
I think that was one of the Kazar Sim Racing cars as well. Let's take a look at some more replays. I think this is what happened to the number 77 Next Level Racing Audi and just off into that grassy stuff and coming out of the old hairpin mix. Friends with that tire barrier. One other car has made friends with that barrier so far today. It's unfortunate that Justin has done that as well. Let's take a look at another incident, by the way. No, this was the tail end of that first incident. The other incident that we're trying to now take a look at, I do believe, involved Vincent Ravislot when one of the Apex Missiles cars. Here comes that replay now.
Oh, getting surprised by the car ahead, and so rejoining back onto the circuit, straight into one of the I can't quite tell who, Solar Vision Racing cars, I believe that was, that had gotten a piece of that. We'll get to see it on the replay now, as the Apex Miss is just seeing, following in the tyre tracks of the car ahead. You can see basically almost following him into the grass there. Another car having problems further back, seeing that instance, and the Solar Vision Racing team, unfortunately, nothing to do with that. They had a car, they had a car spun back across them, and teammate contact in the back end of that incident.
So that's what happened then on lap number 1. We must say, by the way, more updates from race control. The number 383 was in its intended qualifying spot. So Jonathan Sterling now at the wheel of the venerable old Ford. It's so old, in fact, Connery, if we try and jump on board now, you can see there in the middle of the cockpit, it's even got a sequential shifter. So this car is super old. However, Jonathan Sterling with that 5-second advantage now looks very good as we approach the first 5 minutes completed here in race number 2.
The driver model doesn't reach over to even touch the shifter, so iRacing please fix in that instance. But CXR Project Black, well, surprisingly, we're allowed to start from the race leads. Maybe a little bit of confusion as far as the race results from the previous race are concerned, maybe penalties affecting things in that respect. But with 5 minutes done, CXR Project Black have a 5.4 second almost advantage back to P2 at the moment, so they have a very healthy gap to start off this race, and one that they certainly can use, especially since a lot of the faster cars through the field are still having to pick and prod their way through and won't be going as fast as they are able to in clear air. So that they need to try and maximize this opportunity that they've been given to try and extend the gap at the front.
As oh no, don't tell me, Oscar T. Coper has just had a big off. I was about to say, what a fantastic start for the number 56. Was running up in 12th position. But now the 56 struggling through the gravel. Is he going left and right, trying to hang onto the car down the order for the number 56 car? And this is going to hurt their championship hopes. Let's take a look at this RaceBot TV replay then for the number 56 RSR by G Performance side by side with the number 777. 2 doesn't go into 1. And, well, we'll take a look at an aerial look at this one. But that's a little bit of a risky move, I would have to say, for the number 56 car, Connery. They won that race number 1, and you can't afford, even in this reverse grid race, to cost yourself this much time, as you now see the number 777 going hard into the tire barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Harry Kerjelen there in that 777 car, just getting tagged around from behind. He didn't know exactly what has happened there. 2 of those cars just coming together early on in this race. Team Viking's going to have the be worse off in terms of the damage there in that one as they hit that barrier at quite a speed. So, you know, we expected to see early instance here, so that is certainly not out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, back towards the front, you see Altitude Esports there trying to lock onto the back of the Roaring Chicken Nuggets. And let's see if Nick Stoop can hold on to this position. And Altitude looking to go down the inside at turn 8, and they've been able to make the pass complete. And they gobble up all of those nugs, but the nugs will try and come back at them as they head their way down the back straight then, trying to make this side-by-side into the chicane. Surely not. They're going to chicken out.
And if we can get a look maybe on board with the Laps at Racing number 17 car, I think there's something written on the back of that Roaring Chicken Nuggets. Are you talking to me? Well, right now he's in a battle with everyone, and down the inside for Martin Hobson. Moves himself up into 4th place. That Roaring Chicken Nuggets number 99 starting to struggle a little bit, but this is what reverse grid racing is all about. Mixes up the order just that little bit more. Taking a look further back as well, Quasar Sim Racing number 25 trying to now get up a few more positions. You can see they've got past the Awesome Motorsport Group car, number 72 behind them in the shot. But let's take a look then at some of your other competitors who had some strong showings in that race number 1. Look at number 14 car, Nick Madsen behind the wheel for Mag Performance, trying to get his way up into the top 10 after that 3rd place podium position, looking very good. He's got the number 55 RSR by G Performance behind him as well, Connery. So 2 cars here on a good run so far as they try and break back up into the top 10.
I'm just sad you didn't appreciate my pun, you know. That's just sad. That's a sad state of affairs. But it's a sad state of affairs. But like I said, it's all getting very, very close here, isn't it? In the mid-pack with RSR number 55 trying to head their way through. They were so close to being able to get the race win in race 1, and now they look to try and get as high as they can here in race 2, but they still can't find a way around the Mag Performance Sim Racing team, who is basically equal on pace compared to them at this stage of the race. Fought with their teammate, with the RSR teammate, of course, for that final podium spot coming towards the end of race 1. But now here comes RSR around the outside at the chicane. A big cut-off there for Mag Performance, and they've somehow been able to make the chicane as well. But do they get the speed off the corner? I don't think so. Meanwhile, fighting ahead of these guys, ProDrive Esports down the inside of .exe. as it's Audi versus McLaren, and it's Audi versus BMW further back in the shot as well, as they all try to squabble over this position. RSR giving a shot to the back bumper of the McLaren to try and encourage it into the final corner. Got out with a plunge from HN Engineering, and he's been able to make the space. They continue to wrestle and trade paint off the corner as RSR gets forced wide.
That was some fantastic fighting there, and RSR just got caught out by an opportunistic dive there from Alexei Netsov behind the wheel for HM Engineering, and now the number 55 car all the way back down to number 19th in this queue. So for the RSR team, fantastic results in race number 1, struggling a little bit more here. Race number 2, let's take a look at the RaceSpot TV replay of what happened there. This is a separate incident, in fact, for the number 222 car that was in second place in class. So Shipsky Racing have managed to lose it all by themselves. That's going to hurt them. They're currently running in 8th position as they get back onto the track. But we'll take a look at this replay then. Door-to-door contact, and forced wide is the number 55 car. I don't think he's going to be too happy with the HM Engineering car, but you can see all cars just scrabbling for some real estate there. They try and stay on the black stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Shipsky Racing, though, with that incident, they've fallen behind Quasar now, so they're down in around about P8, P9 at the moment. Meanwhile, this battle is continuing in amongst the RSR car here, and a huge gaggle of cars ahead of them as well. MJB Performance, ProDriver Esports, Quasar Sim Racing.exe also involved in this. We're looking, big lunge down at the hairpin from multiple cars as .exe got caught in the middle of the sandwich there as they get an NJB Performance car on their door.
That was a big send from the 733, and it's still going on in the background of the shot. RSR getting forced wide once again. The number 55 back up into at least 17th place, but my word, all types of action happening here on the edge of the top 20. And it's a little bit calmer at the front of the field, but we'll keep an eye out here as .exe once again side by side with the number 73 Maya Sim Speed Performance Audi. Let's take a look then at the RaceSpot TV replay as they all tried to fight for some room down into the old hairpin. We start though coming through the S's, through that chicane, that quick left and right where you try and carry as much momentum as you can. And here you watch the 733 hard on the brakes as first the Quasar Sim Racing car tries to get down the inside of the McLaren, then they get swamped, losing 4 places in the space of just one corner.
All contact on live pictures. RSR made contact with ProDriver Esports on the live pictures, heading their way through one of the right-hand corners. That's McLean's turn 7 there, and there's it's caused a bit of carnage behind him, so he wants to rejoin there as the number 58 tried to get back going. We'll have to wind this one back a bit further. There's the back end of the incident there. Collects one of the SVR cars, collects one of the laps at Racing Team cars as well, I believe that was. So not exactly ideal in that situation. It's a shame that battle came to that.
Yeah, take a look here further back slightly, side by side into the corner. 2 BMW scrapping it out. A little bit of contact with the number 55, and you see the checkup behind them as Solar Vision Racing also makes contact there. So a few cars getting caught out by the number 58, getting sent off into the barrier. Let's take a look back at the live pictures because that number 58 is crawling around the track, still out there trying to make something happen, but not much is happening as things stand. Let's jump then to your race leader because, well, we talked about him maybe having a penalty, but there you can see gap now out to 8.8 seconds, and take a look at the lap gaps now, Connery. Yeah, for Jonathan Sterling, a nice Sunday drive it's looking like as things stand.
That's all that he needs to do for the moment, especially in this first stint where there's no traffic out there. He just needs to maintain the gap and be able to hold that advantage into the second portion of the race after the pit stop phase, because a lot of the faster teams in this series are still sort of stuck in that mid-pack trying to work their way through. They haven't been able to gain the clear air to be able to maximize the time gains here, race leader. And now CXR Project Black really sitting in the best seat of the house at the moment and having no pressure whatsoever from the Altitude Esports car behind. But the battle for P3 is certainly very, very different at the moment as Team Huizinveld try to get themselves up into that final podium spot. Jan Senkowski very much locked onto the back of that Ferrari as the number 17 Lapset Racing team tried to hold up.
So just under 15 minutes done. Start approaching the pit window in about 10 minutes time as Jan Senkowski, one of the fastest cars on the track. There you see at the top of your screen, fastest lap in this race number 2, a 1:26.753 for Senkowski. Gap down to just 0.2 of a second as he tries to work himself up into a podium position. A lot of work to do here, but 13 seconds behind your race leader for the fastest car on track. The Ford out front has been doing some good lap times, yes, but Sentikowski has shown at the end of race 1 he is the class of the field when it comes to putting in these super quick lap times. Takes a look to the inside as he heads through Coppice, now diving down in towards the chicane. He's going to get a good run off the corner here, but not going to really look to get the move done in through the chicane. Maybe try and set this up through the next part of the corner. He might actually take a look down the inside because that run was fantastic, and the Ferrari is going to have to give him the position around the outside. Sentikowski up into 3rd place, and now 4 seconds behind 2nd place Fletcher.
Yeah, still a pretty major gap to your race leader, but now Sentikowski can really focus on that, on trying to surmount that gap now, as it has come down a little bit. It was 8 seconds, now it's down to 5. So I think CXR have had a problem somewhere out there on circuit. I can't imagine where it would be. I'm just trying to still look back on the replay here, but I'm not really finding anything. But they have lost a lot of time.
Yeah, they have, and in a few laps time we'll show you what the lap time delta has been, because last time around for CXR Project Black it was a 1:27.9. However, for Sentikowski a 1:27.6, so potentially just a little bit of traffic maybe there for your race leader. I'm not really seeing any race traffic on my track map, but you never know, maybe a small mistake. Feeling a little bit of pressure on his Sunday drive out there in the front. We're watching a battle on the edge of the top 20, a big queue of cars all being led by the number 56 RSRG performance car. There's another queue of cars that's starting to get very close. This is on 10th on backwards as well. Currently leading this queue, the number 24 Pro Driver Esports machine. We ride on board with Jose Alonso at the wheel currently as we work past 15 minutes gone on the clock. So 10 minutes to go until the pit window opens. You can see in the background of the shot Nick Madsen for Mag Performance Sim Racing trying to close on the Frenchman Clement Boutelot in the number 44 Xanity Motorsports car as well. A few of these groups starting to develop up and down the pack, but still, as a result of some of those first lap things. Sorry, Connery, what's happening?
Yeah, Boutelot had a big amount of oversteer coming off the chicane there, and it's really put him under threat from that Mag Performance Audi now, as things start to get a little bit tighter here in the battle for P11 out there with 43 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. Madsen very much all over the back of the Audi, trying to find the speed off the corner, but he has to lift out of it because that Audi was just parked on the exit. That BMW, excuse me, was parked on the exit.
Yeah, good defensive driving in front from the Frenchman as Madsen tries to close down. There's been an issue for one of the Apex Missers cars, the 185 Indy. Let's try and take a look at what's happening for that car as I try and find it on my timing screen. There you can see around in the last corner. He tries to get his way back out onto track in a safe manner. Took him about 12 seconds of time lost in the gravel. Take a look at the RaceSpot TV replay though, Connery.
Yeah, car headed its way down the inside of the Lapsat Racing Team 235. Optimistic move coming down into the final corner, especially given Apex Missers had quite hastily returned to the racing line here. We'll get to see it up on screen for you now. You can see the big move down the inside there and just overrunning the corner just a little bit. There was more than the car's width of space there on the inside they could have used, but they wanted a little more.
Wanted a little more indeed. And you see the second Lapsat Racing car there having to avoid the stricken BMW in front as the Apex Missers 185 finally gets its opportunity to rejoin. Let's take a look, though, at Altitudes Esports for just a few seconds, Connery. Take a look at the gap, now down to 7.3 seconds between positions number 1 and 2 as things stand. You see on the last few laps, you were talking about Sterling dropping off a little bit potentially. Look at the delta. And then the last time around as well, another 0.4 of a second gain by Fletcher in the Ferrari. So, number 111 on a charge now. And it seems as though maybe the tires are starting to wear from underneath Sterling in front. But 5 minutes to go until Sterling has the opportunity, potentially, Connery, to come down onto pit lane and hand it over to driver number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll be monitoring this gap quite closely. That's for certain. There's certainly a chance that it could stabilize out by the time the pit stop phase arrives. So maybe it was just a poor couple of laps there for Sterling. But I mean, certainly lap number 10 was a bit of a poor one, given his 127.2 in the lap before. So losing about 0.7 of a second on that lap alone. But I think as long as he can get back in gear, it's going to be fine for him up until the pit stop phase. Meanwhile, deeper in the pack, as your race number 1 winner, still kind of stuck here in 17th spot, looking to try and get the pass done up into 16th over the Quasar team.
Right behind him, Coper, who finished 3rd in race number 1. So a few of these cars having some more issues trying to get through the pack than we were maybe thinking. There was a decent delta across the board. We saw about 2.5 seconds in qualifying. That is fairly close, but 2.5 seconds at a track like this is not the closest in terms of pace. But for the number 78 machine right now, following the number 26, who goes wide down in through the Melbourne hairpin, is going to set up an opportunity around the outside for the number 78, but it's not where he's going to look to make it happen. Instead, an over-under potentially for the number 78 as cars in the background stack up. And there was the Shipsky Racing car parked at the apex of the last corner. Once again, Shipsky Racing not having a fun race so far. Race number 1 not smooth for them. They started at the front of race number 2. Unfortunately, though, incidents have dropped them back to 20th place as things stand.
Yeah, solo car incident, that one, despite how close the pro driver car was to the back of them. Just lost it in the late phase of braking, trying to get that car's nose in, and car didn't like it. Swapped ends, and it's very lucky that I think that was, which car was that? That was the Mag Performance Audi, I believe it was, for avoiding that as they slammed on the anchors.
Absolutely, and as we jump back to the live pictures, the Quasar Sim Racing car, the number 26 goes around. More carnage now as well as Mayor SimSpeed looks to get past the Team Heiskeveld number 78. So all types of stuff happening further back in the pack. Ostity Coper trying to run away now up into 15th place. His teammate, by the way, the number 55, up into 11th place. As in the background, Solar Vision, contact with Shipsky Racing, and they are around and over is Shipsky Racing.
Oh, the rejoin is poor from Shipsky as well. Straight into the path of the Lapsat Racing Team 235, as they were expecting them to come right back across circuit. A little bit of a, little bit too much fisticuffs there coming down in towards the chicane. There's no reason why you should be squeezing each other that close in the middle of the road. That is just awful. And Shipsky Racing, the rejoin is a penalty in and of itself. But look at that. There's the contact between the SER car and Shipsky Racing as they have a dramatic off coming towards the end of the back straight. And you can just see as we continue looking at Shipsky Racing, this rejoin here straight into the path of the Laps car. Yeah, this isn't great.
Yeah, that's really not great. And let's try and take another look at this one with on board with Shipsky Racing. Here we'll drive on board. You can see as well, I think there's just a... try and get a better look at this one maybe on the onboard with Shipsky Racing. I wondered if the cars just... the Shipsky car tried to go left and the other car tried to go right. So two going into one is something that we always say doesn't go well. Here you get another look at it from the onboard view. It's hard to tell the lines there being taken, Connery, but I think that initial incident might be ruled a racing incident. It's this rejoin that you rightly call out as being just awful.
Yes. Look... It's a pet peeve of mine. You know, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and drivers should be more aware. Yes, you have had the frustration of having an incident that perhaps may or may not be your fault, but there's no reason just to come back across the circuit, especially with cars coming, as clear as day, especially if you use your F3 box. And to do that and ruin another innocent team's race it's just not the way we want to go racing, and I hope the stewards come down hard on that.
Yeah, it is looking like Race Control going to have a busy evening/afternoon, depending on where in the world they are. Race Control is scattered, some in Europe, some on the west coast of the US, just like myself. So, busy for Race Control, but more action further up in your field. This is the battle for 5th on back. Roaring Chicken Nuggets have a small queue of cars formed behind them with the Quasar number 25 looking to pounce and get themselves up into the top 5. We should also just take a look then at the gaps forming in your top 3, Connery, because it's not really come down as we were expecting. As you see on the top left of your screen, the gap between 1st and 2nd now down to 6 seconds. However, importantly, the gap between the 111 and the 48 still hanging around 3.5 seconds. Sentikowski putting in some good lap times, but not able to close in enough just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So the gap kind of remaining stagnant at the very front of the field right now as we look to this P6 battle that still continues on behind the Roaring Chicken Nuggets. And you said they were queuing up behind them. I'd certainly queue for some Nuggets at the moment, that's for sure. But coming out of the final corner then, that BMW still ahead of the Ferrari, ahead of the two Audis. Further back in the shot right now, and well, it's just a little bit of a lull in the race for them, as it looks like Archer Brothers Esports really gained a lot of time there coming through Redgate to try and lock onto the back of that Ferrari ahead of them, but going to need a little bit more whip to be able to at least bring themselves alongside.
Absolutely, middle portion of the race just settling down a little bit. 45 seconds to go until pit window is open. 35 minutes is the maximum drive time allowed for any single driver. So next time around the start-finish stripe, pit window will officially be open. You look at the gap, by the way, in the top three on the left-hand side of the screen now, down below 6 seconds between the 383 Project Black CXR machine, that Ford GT, the venerable old Ford GT with its sequential shifter and very old traditional cockpit, continues to lead. Gap now down to the 5.6 seconds. So it's being eaten away right now. That Altitude Esports 111 really on a charge. And in fact, let's jump on board with the 111 because Connery, that gap is coming down hand over fist right now. I wonder if those tires for the CXR Project Black machine have been well and truly burnt off, even in these cooler temperatures.
I was going to say, cooler temperatures, still about 25 minutes into the race where these cars have absolutely no problems going on the tires for a full hour. Possibly not. I mean, there's also the fact that driver fatigue might also be setting in as well. That might also be a thing, and just the natural fluctuations in the lap times. Not many of these drivers are going to be too terribly consistent, at least compared to, of course, World Championship drivers here on iRacing. So there's a little bit more natural variation there in terms of their lap times. But pit stop phase certainly well underway right now as the pit stop window has been opened. Archer Esports coming down in for their scheduled stop. Same with Team Hoisenfeld 78 as your winners last time out just a couple of moments ago. Solar Vision Racing also heading their way in as well. So a couple of early stoppers.
And interesting to note the split strategies here as we watch Archer Brothers dropping off the jacks. It looks like Heisenfeld as well took tires alongside the 202. Doesn't appear as though the 32 for Solar Vision decided to take tires, so that is an interesting split strategy. By the way, for Max Riedmuller, he's now been up on the jacks for about 33 seconds. That's about 3 seconds longer than it was for Archer Brothers Esports, so he's dropped a little bit of time, but Riedmuller back in the car has a lot of work to do now from the back of the field. 27th position is where he's going to roar back out onto track. There you can actually see, though, they've come out right in front of your overall race leader. Let's hop on board with Jonathan Sterling, Connery, because gap now 4.6 seconds. Whatever's happening, CXR Project Black and the 383 really starting to lose a lot of time now.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at the race laps for CXR. I mean, they were comfortable in their low to mid 127s, at least in the middle portion of this race, but the previous two laps have been, well, not the greatest. The 127.8 and the 127.6, not exactly great compared to the pace that Altitude Esports are able to put out there. So it's, I think it's really more Altitude Esports, though, really turning up the wick at this stage in the race more than it is CXR Project Black actually falling away. I think Altitude Esports have found another gear to go chasing for this one in the later portions of this first stint.
Absolutely, I think that's right, because you see the gap as well, still top left-hand corner of your screen between the 48 and the 111, still around 4 seconds. So Jan Sentikowski, one of the fastest cars on the track, not able to close onto the back of the Ferrari, but we watch on board now with a battle between 8th and 9th places. The number 55 RSR by G Performance car. This is not the battle that we saw at the end of race number 1. That was between the 56 car and the number 14, but still scrapping it out. It's a battle we've seen just a moment ago in race number 1, but this time it's Strogbauer at the wheel. He's got Madsen in front of him, and this should be a very tasty fight as we are about halfway through the pit window. It does appear as though, by the way, the car went off on track, back on now, so all looking good midway through the pit cycle. That was the FBP Racing number 488, so they already had to serve a significant penalty. Not going that well for them, unfortunately, but continue to watch this battle as in front of them as well. They're side by side between the Roaring Chicken Nuggets and Pro Driver Esports Black. Roaring Chicken Nuggets. The queue's now in front of them, Connery, so I mean, unfortunately at a McDonald's drive-thru, you don't really want to be at the back of the queue. You want to be at the front.
No, yeah, absolutely. But I think Nick Stoop right now, I mean, he found himself in that position thanks to a good start paired with the reverse grid situation as well. So it's only natural that you're going to be falling down the order at this point as those faster cars try to work their way through. But still on for a good finish, though. I think top 10 here, that would be very beneficial for their championship standings. But at this point, you still are waiting for a lot of cars to head their way down towards the pit lane to get their one and only scheduled stop done as well. I'm seeing this battle close up for P5. That's Pro Driver Esports versus Quasar. Getting very close coming through the chicane, but still no opportunity for Jose Alonso to work his way by for the moment. Deep on the brakes into the hairpin, but is not tempted to dive his way down the inside just yet. There's the race leader in, though. CXR Project Black in from the race lead with about a 4-second gap.
So we'll see what the Ford decides to do down on pit lane. Sterling is going to hand over the car to his teammate. There you can see driver change going on as AJ Southgate gets behind the wheel for the number 383. Also down on pit lane, the Roaring Chicken Nuggets. Nick Stoop going to hand over to his teammate as well. You can see Laps at Racing Team, the number 17, also in to the pit lane as we wait to see who else is going to dive down this time around. There's another taker down at the back. That's the Awesome Motorsport Group, the number 72. So a few cars have elected to come down onto pit lane. We continue watching the battle that is now between 3rd and 4th. This was for 5th before a few takers down onto pit lane as Jose Alonso continues to put the pressure on Richard Small in front of him. Behind them as well, Nick Madsen really starting to feel the heat as Michael Strohbauer continues to put the pressure on there. And all the while out front, look at the gap between the 111 and the 48 now. 3.5 seconds with CXR Project Black down on pit lane. The 48 trying to pull back the gap just a little bit more at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Pro Driver Esports looking to try and make some progress over the car ahead of them as well. That's the Quasar Sim Racing Hydra, as Jose Alonso still trying to apply this pressure, but he's not setting himself up for the move into the hairpin just yet. He's just going to follow closely to the back of the Ferrari, try to get that power down in that Audi. Look towards the outside of Goddard. No, he's just going. Oh, he is going to go for the move. Big lunge around the outside, but you got to be careful. Some of these teams might decide to head their way on towards the pit lane, and that's exactly what the Quasar team has done. They don't want any of that fight.
Quasar followed down by RSR by G Performance, the number 55. So that frees up Nick Madsen as well. You'll see the Pro Driver Esports car going through turn number 1 with one of the FBP cars as a lapped car down a lap. Let's jump then to, let's just take a look at some of the other things going on in the race. See the number 48.
56.
Number 56, what's happening to them, Connery?
Yellow flag. I think this might be contact. I'm just getting myself a view of it now. It is contact. Oscar T. Cooper, as it was with lap traffic with the Quasar Sim Racing car coming off of the pit lane, and they just get into a tangle off the exit of turn 1.
So RaceBot TV replay, let's take a look at this one. And Oscar's actually just gone off again, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. That was the incident. I think that's that's the Quasar number 26 car, I do believe. Yep. We'll take another look at that from a slightly slower angle, if possible. No, actually, this is the second incident that has just happened down into the old hairpin. Cooper losing the rear end of the car, and this is before he's handed it over, Connery. So this is a driver just pushing a little bit too hard, trying to get the most performance he can. Altitude
Esports are in from what was the race leads, but can the CXR car come through and re-inherit the race lead? They had a comfortable gap, or at least a comfortable but closing gap coming towards the end of that stint, and Mark Fletcher's able to get into his box just fine. Meanwhile, AJ Southgate still out there coming down into the chicane now. It's a big task now to take over that car and bring it to the end, especially if you're Southgate here, taking over from your higher iRacing teammate. Into the Melbourne hairpin he comes, as Team Heusingfeld are still stationary on the lane as well. There goes Altitude Esports, as they are able to get themselves out, and are they able to get themselves out ahead or behind the CXR car? I believe that might end up being ahead. They've had an amazing pit stop phase. What has happened to CXR on this outlap?
The pace has dropped off dramatically for the 383 Ford GT, the only one in the field. It's a very old car. We don't see it much in the iRacing service. Great to see at least one team committed to running this car. However, unfortunately, like you say, the pace has dropped off. You want to know the gap between the Altitude Esports car and CXR Project Black? Well, now it is 5 whole seconds. What has happened to the pace in the number 383? And an interesting note here as well, Connery. If you take a look at the Team Heiskenveld, the gap between the number 383 and the number 48, 2.5 seconds between what will net out as second and third place. The gap between the 111 and the 48 now, where Andrei Ratchevich has taken back over, now about 7 seconds. So there's a lot of work to do if any of these drivers want to catch who is now the net race leader, Ashley Beard, in the Altitude Esports 111.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a lot of lost time. Must have lost on the order of about 6 seconds on those outlaps to be able to have that. Oh, although I am seeing CXR, they might have taken tires though. They're on a 36-second stop compared to the 31 seconds around them. So that's where a healthy amount of the time would have been lost. They might have taken tires.
We'll see, but the 111 retakes the race lead and now has 5 seconds to CXR Project Black behind them. So a big gap to overcome as Pro Driver Esports Black, the number 24, gets rolling off pit lane. Where is he going to come out and rejoin the track as he trundles his way down as a pedestrian 60 kilometers an hour down onto the pit exit, finally gets to hit that button, back up to racing speed. It's going to come out right behind some that's not lap traffic, that is the Laps at Racing team number 17 car, Ibrahim Alouat at the wheel. Fantastic result for him in race number 1 at Silverstone, and he's now got to defend from Felipe Valentin behind him. Out front, by the way, gaps all starting to settle down a little bit. Gap between first and third, 7 seconds as we approach the last 25 minutes of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Laps at Racing Team 17, one of the only other cars that started inside the top couple of positions that isn't, excuse me, CXR Racing Project Black. So, you know, we've had the grid turned on its head and it's sort of self-righted itself at this stage of the race, but Laps at Racing Team 17, let's see if they can hold on to this P5, which is exactly where they started. Not lose any spots on a reverse grid race until halfway through, or over halfway through, is pretty good going, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely, and this reverse grid is once again shaking things up as we now watch cars heading down in towards the second to last corner. The Pro Driver car down the inside of the Ferrari, deep under braking. He's going to force the Ferrari wide, and that opens the door for Boris Avando in the number 55 to look around the outside now as we go down into the last corner. Laps at Racing getting a little bit shaken out. They're going to abandon the corner a little bit, slot back into line, the third car in that train of cars. They've now got Mag Performance, the number 14, Michael Schlacks behind the wheel once again for the number 14 car. And look at that train of cars. They dive down into turn number 1 in the gap that those front two have already managed to pull. The number 14 will be hoping to jump past Ibrahim Alouat as soon as he can. This is a battle that potentially could shake out to be the battle right on outside the podium, unfortunately, Connery. A lot of these teams and faces are faces we saw fighting at the front of race number 1. However, unfortunately, this reverse grid hasn't been so kind to them. And you take a look at the gap as you see Ovando making a move around the outside potentially. He's going to have to back out the corner, but you see the gap right now. 23 seconds to your net race leader as Alouat's around.
Big impact with the tire barrier as well. The number 17 Laps at Racing team trying to hold on to their positions after the start, and they've basically been completely run over here as far as I'm concerned. That is absolutely abhorrent from the Audi Mag Performance. That is... well, if you want a definition of a punterino, I think that's probably it there.
Yeah, let's go on slow motion here. You'll see the brake lights light up on the Ferrari as he slows down. See the revs just drop a moment after, just not reacting enough in time to what was happening in front of him for Michael Schlacks. And while the 14 lost a race win in race weekend number 1 due to contact.
17's off again.
And 17 is off again. So Laps at Racing, unfortunately, not able to get back up to racing speed as easily as they would have wanted.
Yeah, and they're struggling to even get it going. Now they just about have rejoined the racing surface, and that car was crabbing pretty severely down into the chicane, and it's quite understandable that they would lose control past that point. So they're going to have to try and limp that car back to the safety of pit lane. There they are, out into the gravel after the chicane there. So that's not exactly ideal, is it? And careful with the rejoin with cars coming. So they get the car slowed down just enough to not impede a couple of those drivers behind trying to work their way through.
Take a closer look at it here. I wonder if he's got broken steering before he even gets into the corner, trying to stay on the outside. He brakes on the grass. That doesn't help him for sure. But now keep watching as he does this rejoin, Connery. You'll see him stop just on the right-hand side of the track. I don't think that was just to avoid an unsafe rejoin. You see that the right-hand side wheel of the car just kind of popping in and out, as I think there's a little bit of damage to that right side of the car. There you can see the steering as well. The car's crabbing down the road, so clearly not all well with the number 17, and in fact he's down on pit road now, getting some damage repaired.
Yeah, meanwhile, the Roaring Chicken Nuggets trying to defend position. HM Engineering had just about been able to squeeze their way through there. So Roaring Chicken Nuggets down into P10 now at this point in the race. That's exactly where they started here in this one. So, I mean, all good things must come to an end. And now Quasar Sim Racing of the car in that Ferrari to try and get past here, coming up through Redgate. You can just see there's a lack of pace inside that BMW at the moment. Really benefiting out of the reverse grid, and I mean, if they can still hold on to a couple of spots here, that would be beneficial for them, especially inside the final 20 minutes with not a lot of cars behind them past this point. So it might be a good chance they'll be able to hold on to a top 15 at least.
And while this is a brand new team that is trying to get more competitive in the iRacing service, they do everything with a little bit of fun, and the Roaring Chicken Nuggets name just a little bit of a ode to the team members and their fondness for the chicken nuggets. I could go for a 10-piece right now. It might be my
10? Just 20. You gotta get a share box. Okay? This is not sponsored by McDonald's.
Not sponsored, but I mean,
not sponsored. Not
Connery, you ruined my pun. They're in 10th place. I want a 10-piece nuggets.
Look, that's revenge for not acknowledging my pun earlier on in the race, okay?
Well, I might not have acknowledged it. It went totally over my head. Fortunately, someone in our YouTube chat acknowledged it, and someone acknowledging the Roaring Chicken Nuggets right now is Quasar Sim Racing, and Garrett Thompson, who's trying to find a way past, getting very close to the rear bumper there as he had to check up midway through the Melbourne hairpin, rather. But this battle on the edge of the top 10 really starting to heat up, and it's one of the closer battles that we do have at this point in time. We have a number of retirements from the race as well. We started 34 cars taking to the green flag, only 25 on the lead lap as things stand. So 9 cars have been, unfortunately, unceremoniously booted from the race in many ways, and wait and see just how busy race control is after this all shakes out. While we take a look at Garrett Thompson continuing to chase down. Let's go and jump back, though, to the battle for the race lead, CXR Project Black. They're trying to close down the gap to Ashley Beard in front, and you can see having some mild success there, Connery. But the more important thing, you take a look at the gaps behind. Andrei Ratkovic is coming and coming fast.
Yeah, maybe not so much on those last 2 laps, though. So maybe they've CXR been able to stem the bleeding and continue on their focus, their progress, to get back up into the race lead, and they're the only team inside this these top 10 cars that I think took tires on that stop, because their pit stop is a huge outlier compared to everyone else. So they're really trying to use use those fresh tires to their advantage here. You can see the brake lights on the front really just glowing as they head their way through Redgate, and they cool off as they head their way down the Carina curves and in towards the old hairpin. But they're lopping time off of Altitude Esports here. It's down to 3.5 seconds now as they take a lot of curve coming through the old hairpin.
Taking a lot of curve. And I must say, that CXR Project Black car, we didn't see the team livery for race number 1, but I must say, it's a very striking looking car, and it very much accentuates the lines on the Ford, the great looking livery. We have some other great looking paint schemes up and down the running order as well. Let's take a look at some battles further down in your field, because Mag Performance, after that little punteroonie that they got involved with slightly earlier, chasing down Pro Driver Esports Black and their Audi in front of them. It's a battle for 6th and 7th. They're about 2.5 seconds behind the number 55 of Boris Avando for RSR by G Performance, who's running in 5th place as things stand. And they're all trying to chase down Liam Matthews for the Archer Brothers Esports. He sits 12 seconds behind 3rd place, but that 4th place position looking to be the one where a lot of these stronger contenders are trying to get back up towards. As we head through the chicane now, is Mag Performance getting a little bit too heavy over the curves, losing a little bit of traction on the run down to the Melbourne chicane, and 15 minutes to go, so about a quarter of the race still left. It's been an action-packed race, that is for sure. More action happening down in the order as well, as Quasar Sim Racing, the number 26, takes 22nd place from the .exe McLaren. So action up and down the field as the Pro Driver car gets a little bit squirrely on the braking into the final corner, and that's going to once again bring Schlax back into the battle.
It is, but he will lack opportunity in towards turn number 1. Able to close up a little bit on the brakes there. I'm still trying to keep on this guy, gap to the race lead at the moment, because Altitude Esports, CXR Project Black now separated by 3.2 seconds. So CXR are driving that car on the ragged edge right now, just trying to find all the time feasibly possible out there on circuit, and they've been finding a decent amount of success. And with still about 11 and a half laps to go, there's still time for them to really just still chip away at this gap. And the beneficial thing for them is that Altitude Esports will be coming up on traffic in just a couple of moments' time as well. So that's going to come down, tumbling down.
And there you can see the traffic. In fact, that's Shibsky Racing, the 222, currently running in which position are they? They're down the order some ways. Not been a smooth result for them. In fact, that's the N-Race Esports car, who's had a little bit of an issue going through that last corner, getting all sorts of wrong. Had to get the hands across to save the car, and so N-Race Esports down in 29th place, going to hang on the right-hand side of the track, let the leader pass. Gap now almost down to 3 seconds. So AJ Southgate really pushing it. And Connery, you kind of dismissed my thought that this might be tire related, but if you're saying that the CXR car took tires in the pit stop, I'm really wondering if they're running some aggressive setup here with the cooler track temperatures that we may have expected to see if we came here in the middle of summer, running some crazy cambers, running those tires up to the ragged edge in terms of heat, and really pushing them in terms of their wear. But when you change them, therefore, in that pit stop window, there's a potential for AJ Southgate to get back in the car and really push the gap down to 2.3 seconds.
I don't think they actually are on freshened tires, because I've gone back and looked at the actual pit stop, and at no point do I see that car go up and down on the jacks. So it must be a difference between the two drivers then.
Interesting. And as they head through,
it was just a long stop though. It was a long stop.
And no, that is for sure, and we can bring that up on screen right now. There you can see the bottom left-hand corner. Pit lane time total for AJ Southgate was 53.2 seconds. You see on the right side, 35.7 seconds was the total pit stop. So 53.2, that was the time for CXR Project Black. As we now take a look at Ashley Beard in the 111, 57.7. So almost 5.5 seconds is the delta, and Ashley Beard going to have to work his way around another lapped car. That's Next Level Racing's number 77 GT3 car, but CXR Project Black, the gap comes down even more now, Connery. They lost 6 seconds in the pit strategy, therefore. However, they're finding that time on track, and N-Race Esports going to get out of the way and let them go now.
Yeah, gap down to now 2 seconds. DXR, they're making this certainly very, very possible, and Altitude Esports are now hoping that Southgate actually gets impeded by the Next Level Racing GT3 car they're about to come up on. Otherwise, that gap is really going to quickly come down, and there's enough laps left in this race for CXR to try and mount a challenge for the race lead, and that traffic just gets well out of the way. They don't have to, but that's just what Next Level Racing have done. They're not involved in the battle with anyone close on circuit, so there's no point in them impeding your leaders. So Altitude Esports, they were hoping that CXR get held up, but CXR just easy as pie. They just get by.
Well, I have a feeling that if you are, which was the RSR car? I believe it was the number 55 that was battling for the race lead in race number 1. If you're the RSR car, Connery, I think you'd be pretty irritated if you come back and you watch race number 2 and you see how easily lapped cars let the leaders go. Because you remember, I think it's fair to say that while the 78 had some great pace in race number 1, wasn't really looking like the move was going to happen until they got stuck behind lap traffic that did not want to let that leader go.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty frustrating. But you know, the difference is in this race, those bits of lap traffic weren't involved in any battles. The traffic in the first race very much was involved in an on-track battle with close competitors. So there's a little bit of a difference there as this gap continues to tumble. It's now within 2 seconds between Altitude Esports and CXR Project Black. There's battle further back in the order as well. It's Archer Brothers Esports tries to hold on to 4th place from the RSR by G Performance number 55 car. That was 2nd place in race number 1. Oh, Archer Brothers Esports, they're off. They're off and they've given up the position.
They've given up the position. The pressure from Ovando is proving to be strong in the 202 with a slight mistake. Liam Matthews has lost about 4 seconds of time and now has race number 1 winner right on his tail. The number 78 doing a fantastic job to carve his way up through the field and looking at the potential for a top 5 result. What a finish that would be after starting all the way back down on the edge of the top 30. But meanwhile, while this battle rages on, let's jump back to the battle for the race lead, because gap was down to 1.4 second for just a few seconds. It's gone up a few tenths once again as they go through some of these slower corners. We talked about the battle between the Audi and the BMW in race number 1. This time around, race 2, looking to be Ferrari versus Ford. And Connery, that Ferrari 488 has had a little bit of a nerf in terms, if we're going to use an esports term, in terms of its top-end grunt. However, at a track like this, it's clearly still got some performance through the corners. Gap now down below 1.5 once again, though, so clearly that Ford is coming on strong.
Yeah, and if you're Altitude Esports right now, if you're Ashley Beard, you're looking at that F3 box and you're seeing the time just come down and down and down, a couple of tenths of a second a lap, and now you start to see the very low ride height for GT in your wing mirrors, in your rear view. And now it's not about the numbers on the F3 box. Now it's about you versus the other driver.
So Ashley Beard versus AJ Southgate for race win number 2 here. In the race meeting number 2 for the IVRA GT Sprint Series. We started off in Silverstone. We're now here at Donington Park as the sun continues to set. There you can see fantastic shot of the sun in the background as it's about to drop below the tree line. But AJ Southgate once again deep under braking. Gap now just half a second as Southgate continues to press on. There are some battling happening further down in your field, by the way. Michael Schlacks involved in a fierce fight with the Team Heiskeveld number 78 machine because Archer Brother Esports has had another issue. Archer Brother Esports now down into 9th position, but we continue to ride on board with AJ Southgate as he heads down into turn number 1.
Either way, for CXR, this will be an absolutely fantastic finish. It's just about whether it's P1 or P2 at this point, as they were a huge beneficiary from the reverse grid. They started from reverse grid pole position, and if they're able to win this race, that would be such an awesome performance from them. But Altitude Esports, with the 20 places that they've gained, looking to try and deny. Meanwhile, are off in the further back in the picture. Team Heiskeveld starting to fight with Mag Performance as well as we speak, but the .exe McLaren, it's starting to go for a bit of a spin coming out of the old hairpin.
And that was coming just as the leaders are coming up to the old hairpin as well. So Ren Zielman staying well out of the way. Gap was down to 0.4 of a second for just a moment. So this battle really starting to ratchet up. We take a look then at the other battles we were just mentioning as the number 78 works on Mag Performance and Michael Schlacks in front of him. They do have that Pro Driver Esports Black Machine right behind them as well. As the number 78 looks to the outside, they've just been passed by Schlacks on this lap down into turn number 1. Gonna look to maybe try and get the place back as they go in towards the chicane. Nothing happening here as the number 78 still tries to look to the inside and make something happen. He's gonna at least compromise the 14 in terms of the line through the chicane, and here will be a great run for the 78 if he can carry the momentum. But he gets a little bit too over the curves, and that bounces the car a little bit too much. But down to the inside he looks, and he forces the number 14 out of the way, very deep under braking, and that is going to be a very, very angry number 14. Michael Schlacks will not be too thrilled at that passing opportunity, but he'll try and have a fight back now as we run down into turn number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is any... well, the business that's not finished amongst these guys, but Heisenfeld's still trying to stretch their legs at the very front of the pack. It was a very bold and daring move down the inside. Meanwhile, another victim of the old hairpin barrier as one of the laps cars hit their way in there. But let's have a look at the battle for the race lead then, because it is, well, nothing to separate these two cars with the final 7 minutes of this race to run. AJ Southgate, he's done the hard bit, closing up the gap, but now it's even more difficult to try and get past because Altitude will make that Ferrari the widest Ferrari that you've ever seen to try and come home with the race win. Here in race 2, Ashley Beard is the man to try and hold on with about 5 laps to go. No move, yes, ooh, a look to the inside coming through the hairpin there, but there's still 5 laps to go after this.
Still 6 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. It's going to be a fight all the way to the very end of the race as the 383 goes to the inside once again. The 111 gets a little bit spooked, looks to the outside, but here comes the run from AJ Southgate down in towards turn number 1. He's looking to the outside. That's not typically a passing opportunity indeed. He's going to slot back in, maybe try and over-under down into the old hairpin, but the Ferrari parks itself on the apex, forces the 383 to look to the outside. Not going to do that down into the old hairpin. Still 6 minutes to go. Plenty of opportunity to make the pass happen, and I think right now, Connery, the 383 is feeling the confidence, feeling the car underneath them. Car is looking very settled as he makes his way around the track.
It really is. He's trying to pressure the back all the way up through turn 6. Turn 7, McLean's corner now. You can see a bit of brake checking going on between the two of them as well. But CXR very much locked onto the back of the Ferrari as they head their way down the inside at turn 8. No, that was just a look, an opportunity, and maybe they've just overdone it slightly as Altitude are able to gain a bit more of a gap, a bit of breathing room.
Bit of breathing room down in towards the chicane. We've seen a lot of moves coming out of this. Cars getting great runs out down into the Melbourne hairpin. I keep making that mistake. Is anyone going to make the run down from the chicane? It looks as though Altitude getting a little bit slow off the corner, but not close enough for Southgate to make the lunge. Once again, closes up under braking. The brake disc glowing orange under the load as all the weight forced to the front of the car as it squats down, trying to stop in the shortest distance possible. The old venerable 4GT takes a look to the inside. 111 making another error, like Connery says. And now side by side, they're going to go across the start-finish stripe, down in towards turn number 1. The 383 is already poked its nose in front. Is he going to be able to sweep around the outside and grab onto the race lead? 111 holding firm, though, on the inside and gives a little bit of shove there to the Ford, saying, I'm still here, not over yet.
It wasn't a shove, it was more of CXR trying to get the traction down, but the back end was just stepping out despite these cars having traction control. Of course, you have to be really trying to spin up the tires here in this one as CXR riding the back all the way through turn 6, continuing to not give Altitude any room to breathe in this one. But it was twice in a row that Altitude made a mistake through the final corner that gifted CXR an opportunity to get their way by, but it's the second time in a row that they've been able to hold off the hard-charging Ford GT as they deal with the lap traffic coming down the back straight. Maybe another opportunity for CXR this time in towards the Melbourne hairpin. They just have to negotiate the chicane, and then maybe they can set themselves up for a move, but it's still around about a car length or so between the two of them. No opportunity for Southgate to make his way by just yet, but he knows that Altitude Esports car is weak through the final corner. He might go a little bit more aggressive this time.
Running out of time. He goes to the inside, looks to the inside. The 111 is going to cover the move off, though. Forces Southgate to back out just a tiny bit, and with 3 minutes 30 seconds left on the clock, they're going to cross the line once again, looking at potentially 3 laps to go. So 3 more opportunities, I would think, for Southgate to get the move done. There is a lot of action happening in the background as well, but we're going to stick right here at the pointy end of things where things matter. It's important to note as well, CXR Project Black, race number 1 from Silverstone. They finished 4th, demoted to 6th place as a result of post-race penalties. Then they also missed race number 2 from that weekend. They didn't sign up in time. So the CXR team looking to get a solid haul of points here, and once again closing in on the 111 as he looks to the outside, trying to maybe set up something in towards Coppice. He's going to get a good run here, forces the 111 to go very defensive, and Southgate goes back to the outside once again, thinking of the over-under, the drive off the corner. He gets a fantastic exit, pulls alongside, coming out of the second part of the corner, but this is going to put him on the outside, down in towards the chicane. Who's going to be the last of the late breakers here? The Ferrari's going to try and hold on, and he forces the Ford to slot back into line.
Yeah, Altitude, how have they been able to hold on to that? I don't know. Southgate is trying every single trick in the book to try and get himself past, but nothing's working at the moment as they'll head their way through the exit of the Melbourne hairpin. Southgate might have another look here at the final corner, as he did a lap ago, but the move is covered off. Ashley Beard, a massive defensive effort here in this one, and coming across the line now, 2 laps to go. It's still all to play for.
All to play for. By the way, we're getting reports coming in that the issue for Archer Brother was a VR issue, and that compromised the 78 as well. 78 still runs in 5th place, but they've dropped off the back of the number 55, who's now run away into 4th place and is trying to chase down the 48 still with a few minutes still to go. 2 laps to go as we head down into the old hairpin once again. CXR Project Black with a fantastic run of momentum so far, but can they convert it into a race win? Ashley Beard doing everything he can to hold on to the position as once again we head down into one of the more tricky sections of the track, and this is where Southgate tried to make it happen last time around. He's a little further back. So we head in towards Coppice, not going to be able to get the drive off the corner to make the move happen down into the chicane, but one more lap after this to go, Connery. This is going to come down to the last lap.
Yeah, Altitude has been able to get a healthy gap here on the exit of the corner. CXR are closing in at a rate of knots towards the chicane. They try to commit so much to it as well, and they end up losing speed off the corner, but it still isn't done. 52 seconds left on the clock. We'll get one more to go the next time these guys come across the start-finish line. On board with AJ Southgate then as they head up towards the final corner. Not close enough for a move this time compared to previous laps. So Altitude's able to take the normal line through the corner. We'll come across the line with one more lap to go in this amazing duel between Altitude and CXR.
1 lap to go, 200 points on the line, and race win honors. Who's it going to be? Southgate getting a little bit over the curve into turn number 1, down in towards the old hairpin as he closes on the rear end. Is he going to try and move down in here? The 111 goes defensive, forces the Ford to go a little bit wide, and that's going to check up the Ford as well as we head down in towards turn number 6. We jump off the onboard as we look on as CXR tries to close in once again. This is where we saw them set up the move coming out of Coppice Corner last time. A little bit too far behind once again as the 383 used up all he had before he got to the back of the Altitude Esports 111. Out of Coppice Corner, a little bit too far back once again. This is all going to be, I think, down into the Melbourne hairpin. Can the 383 get a good run out of the chicane? Braking heavily, you see once again, brake rotors lighting up. He's got a great run through the chicane, maybe too good, maybe a slowdown for the 383. He sticks to the outside for just a moment, looks back to the inside. Whoa! Oh my word, what a move he was trying there, and the 111 holds on with some stout defending, covers off the move. The 383, one more opportunity as we look to the last corner, looks to the outside once again. Is an over-under coming? Not this time. The 111's going to hold on the apex, park the car there, and get the drive off the corner. It's a drag race down to the line, but it should be the race win for the 111. It's a photo finish across the line, but it is Ashley Beard and Altitude Esports that take home the win.
What a defense from Altitude Esports. I don't know how Ashley Beard's done that one. That was absolutely incredible. You see how fast that CXR car was in clear air, lopping half a second a lap off of Altitude, but Altitude's able to hold on. That's a defensive drive of the year for me, for Ashley Beard. And we're not just talking about in this IVRA series, in these competitions, but in sim racing as a whole. I do so much of it outside of this series, but that was one of the most impressive defensive performances I have ever seen.
I tell you what, we did this last time with the battle for 3rd and 4th as they came across the line. We'll take a look then at this final lap and all the pressure that AJ Southgate in his 383 Ford GT was trying to put on to Ashley Beard in front, but the Ferrari stayed cool and kept the composure to bring home the win. This was the defensive move down into the old hairpin, forces the Ford wide. They work up the hill once again. This was underneath the bridge. Once again, the Ford, this is where we saw him set up an opportunity a few laps ago, getting a great run through this first part of the corner to set up the move on the exit of Coppice, but this time Ashley Beard able to stay enough in front to force the Ford to try and send a move deep under braking in towards the chicane. And we're about to see that, Connery. I, for a second, was convinced that Southgate had got a slowdown penalty.
Yeah, it was a big commitment into the chicane. You can just see the straight line speed advantage that very slippery Ford GT has. It doesn't have a, well, so low to the ground and so small that it just is so aerodynamically efficient when it comes to the drag coming down the straights. And now trying to go to the lunge to the inside, but Beard had just parked that Ferrari right in the middle of the corner. And the expert move here through the final corner, I'll just show you now, because he knows that CXR are going to go for the up and under move. The body language of the car is there, but Ashley Beard has the car slow down at exactly the right point, on the apex, just parked there. It's the Jason Plato special if you've ever watched BTCC, and it's won Ashley Beard the race.
I tell you what, I love that defensive driving in that battle so much. Let's take one more look at it from the exit of the chicane. You'll watch here as well. Look at how much of the corner It's hard to tell from that angle, but Southgate got all 4 of his wheels on the right-hand side of the white line, cutting that corner to the maximum. Then this defensive move from the 111, he stuck it in right exactly where he needed to be. No multiple moves made from Ashley Beard there. One defensive move, blocking the inside, covering off the move, and then here, like you say, Connery, parks it on the apex, gets the drive off the corner, drag race down to the line, doesn't matter. Beard has it sewn up. Fantastic battle, and what a race we got to see here in race number 2.
Yeah, that's brilliant stuff indeed between the two of them, and my word, there's such respect between those two drivers as well. They could have so easily come together. CXR could have so easily gone for a massive lunge and a massive, I'm going to use the race leader as a brake sort of situation, but they didn't. It was such respectful racing, and that was, I really enjoyed that. That was awesome.
That was some of the best fighting we've seen this year live on the iRacing Esports Network, and trust me, that is saying something. But it is the 111, Ashley Beard and his teammate Mark Fletcher, going to take the win for Altitude Esports by just 1.5 tenths from AJ Southgate in the CXR Project Black number 383 Ford GT. Delighted to see the CXR team really taking that forward all the way to the front, and we'll hope to see them nearer the front throughout the rest of this 6-weekend season. Team Heiskeveld, the number 48, wraps up a good weekend for that crew, getting a race win and number 1 for the number 78 team, and then this podium position for the 48. RSR by G Performance likely to extend the championship lead by their 4th place finish for Boris Avando. The number 78 making a good climb through the field from the back of the field to get up into 5th. Mag Performance Sim Racing Team, number 14 and Michael Schlacks might be expecting a post-race penalty to come down. We'll have to wait and see about that one. HM Engineering making their IVRA competition debut with a 7th place. Another aggressive move that we got to saw from one of their drivers. Another incident for race control to take a look at. Archer Brothers Esports with that VR issue dropped to 8th place on the day, with Quasar Sim Racing, the number 25, coming in 9th. And then our favorite team of the day, the Roaring Chicken Nuggets, on the edge of the top 10.
There we go. And outside the top 10, as I'm still catching my breath after that one, Solar Vision Racing, P11, NJB Performance, P12, Maya Sim Speed Performance in P13, Pro Driver Esports Black in P14, Exanity Motorsports in P15, Lapset Racing Team 235, 16th place, Apex Misses 185 and 17th. Awesome Motorsports Group in P18, Altitude Esports Blue, the sister car of the Race 2 winner here today, finishes in P19. Pro Driver Esports in P20. As well, that's the top 20. They're all on the leading lap, so maybe a little bit better than we had in Race 1. In fact, the top 22 are all on the leading lap. So after what we thought was going to be a more messy affair after Race 1, it seems like it was the cleaner of the 2 races.
I think it was messy at the start. I think the rest of the race may be a bit cleaner. We didn't have as many RaceBot replays to take a look at, but we'll look at the rest of the field. Lapset Racing Team, the number 11 in 21st place. FBP Racing, as a result of that infringement during qualifying, had to serve a stop-and-go penalty. That's dropped them to the very end of the lead lap. 23rd place, the Quasar Sim Racing, number 26. The .exe McLaren in 24th place, with the Next Level Racing GT3 car, the 77 in 25th, the last car 1 lap down. The rest of your cars didn't actually finish this 1 hour affair. You look at the likes of RSR by G Performance, the number 56. Disappointing result for them compared to their sister car. You also got the 411 Estate Coffee Company, N-Race Esports, the number 199. Lapset Racing Team, the number 17. Lapset Racing Team having all sorts of issues today. It all started in qualifying when the 235 ended up in the wall, and didn't go much better for them after that. Number 222, Shipsky Racing. We had a lot of their fans in our YouTube chat today, and unfortunately, a unsafe rejoin that Connery Maddock got to call them out for, and Shipsky Racing has already popped into our YouTube chat just to apologize for that and try and explain that it was, they feel very sorry for it, and unfortunately can't go back and change that. Last 4 finishers, by the way, in 30th. Team Vikings, the number 777. FBP Racing, that 458 car. The reason they're so far down the order is they also didn't uncheck all the service on their penalty that they had to serve at the start of the race. As a result, extra time applied, and they decided to retire from that one. The 186 Apex Missers car didn't make it beyond lap number 1, and neither did Team Oblivion Racing, who didn't even take to the green flag. So an opportunity to just breathe for a second now as the sun continues to set here. Castle Donington overlooks the Donington Park racing circuit. And Connery, I mean, race number 1, lots of chaos, lots of carnage, some great fighting. But I think we were expecting something slightly different in race number 2. Instead, what we got was one of the most interesting fights for the lead that I can remember in a 60-minute sprint race that then all culminated in one of the final laps of the year.
Yeah, just to see CXR be able to close up that gap and give it their best shot, which was a very admirable shot as well. They tried everything. I don't think there's much more they could have done as far as trying to get past Ashley Beard was concerned. But Altitude Esports were just able to hold on somehow, despite being half a second a lap slower. Like, what is that?
It was true chaos and carnage. I loved watching every single moment of it. But it's time for the post-race show here on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceBot TV. And as always, that means time for some post-race interviews. And we're currently waiting for all of the drivers to just join us. And as we wait for them to all file in, it's time to bring in your race winners from race number 2, Ash Beard and Mark Fletcher for Altitude Esports. And guys, we've just been gushing about that performance and the way that you guys managed to hold on to that one in the dying stages of the race. Ashley, what a fantastic job that was. And Mark, a great job to give Ashley the opportunity to try and build on that first half of the race that you had driven.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting race. From the start, I knew the Hussenfeld boys were going to be quick. We had a good result in race number 1 as well, put us in the top 10. So yeah, it was just kind of get to the front as quick as we could. I mean, it was risky. I'm going to save the first 2 laps because we were up to like P5 after 2 laps. And then it was, Ash and Ross were saying, you're going to catch the CXR car by the time you get to the pit stop. So we just extended my stint as far as we could on driver times. And then, yeah, what a job from Ash. One of the best defensive drives I've seen sort of this season. It was mega. We knew the Ford was fast, but yeah, brilliant job from Adam and from Ash as well to make the racing so close.
I'll just ask a little bit of a tough question to ask you guys because the Ferrari it used to be known for being one of the fastest cars in a straight line. That's where it got a lot of its performance from. It's been we use the word nerfed, the esports term nerfed in the balance of performance here. A little bit weaker. What are some of the things that you guys are struggling with the car? And, Ashley specifically, just what were some of the things you were having to do in that defensive drive? We saw you parking it on the apex on a few occasions. Was it really just about trying to stunt the momentum that the Ford was able to build with its big, the big grunt it had behind its engine?
Yeah, that was the main plan. I think the plan was to basically just back it up into the hairpins. I mean, I had no chance really coming out of Coppice. He had quite a good run on me. I think 3 laps to go. So I just had to leave my brakes pretty much to the last minute. But the plan was just try and slow it down into the apex of the Melbourne hairpin and in Goddard. So it was just basically that was the plan, pretty much, if it got close. And I could see it getting close, probably about 10 minutes to go. And it got a bit sketchy, I gotta admit, towards the end.
Just a little bit sketchy, but guys, what a fantastic result that was. And as we continue to gush about what Connery Maddock was calling one of the best defensive drives, not just on the iRacing Esports Network this year, but across all of motorsports. Let's look ahead then to the next round at Daytona, and it might not be one that you guys are looking forward to as much, given what I just mentioned, the slight reduction in top-end performance for this Ferrari. But what are some of your hopes that you have from Daytona? The first 2 race weekends we've had have been action-packed. They've had a lot of incidents up and down through the field. Are you just hoping for another clean weekend and hope that you get the result that you guys clearly have the performance to be able to get?
Yeah, to be fair, I race in another league on a Wednesday night, and we've just done Daytona with the CXR guys as well. Yeah, our Ferrari's pretty good. All the guys here at Altitude, we're a new team. We formed this year, but Jason, Luke, Ash and myself put a lot of time into setups. So yeah, it's just kind of maximising the speed because you watch that Ford is so fast. So yeah, it's just going to be getting some more points on the board and just keeping the championship alive, really. But it was brilliant racing today.
Brilliant racing. And before we let you guys go, it's obviously a new team. Mark, I think you and I have actually raced each other in GT3 competition before in the past. Anyone on the team that you'd like to thank and shout out, especially given that you guys are such a new team, and I'm sure there's a lot of hard work that's gone into this?
Yeah, from me, everybody that kind of supports us on the socials. Obviously, Jason and Luke and Ash for helping make a brilliant car. It was shown today that it was really good. And our sponsors, Sim Racing Studio and Sim Stickers. Thank you guys for getting on board. And yeah, I really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. Ash?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the same as, the team is just like you say, we're coming on leaps and bounds. I'd like to thank you guys as well for putting on a great broadcast, because without that we wouldn't get the exposure, so keep up the good work and we'll come back stronger next race.
I'm not sure how much stronger it can get than winning one of these races, but good luck, guys, and we'll see you in a few weeks from Daytona.
Cheers,
Thank you very much, guys. Okay.
So that was the race winner in an action-packed race number 1. And stand by for some more podium interviews. And Connery Maddock is standing by with the second place team, CXR Project Black, and their driver, Jonathan Sterling.
Yep, absolutely. Driver number 1 for this race for CXR Project Black, putting in a fantastic first stint to be able to pull a decent gap over the rest of the field. It's just everything kind of happened in the second portion of the race when your teammate was in the car there, Jonathan. Just overall mood right now, because I know you're so close, but yet so far.
Yeah, it was a good result for race 2. It was a great fight between Adam and Ashley, but unfortunately we had some mess ups in race 1. Adam, on his outlap, he messed up and put it in the wall, so we couldn't go back out. But it's not a big deal. It just happens every now and then. And then we got caught up in some carnage on lap 1 in race 1, and unfortunate for race 1, but fortunately that put us on pole for race 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you had sort of in the first portion of race 2, you kind of had all the carnage happen behind you, so you were able to get clear with a pretty healthy gap up until the pit stop phase. But what happened in that pit stop phase? Because we did notice that you had a longer stop compared to the rest of your competitors, but you didn't seem like, at least on first look, that you took tires. So is there a reason for that slow stop, or is it just a weird situation?
We're not sure what happened there. To us, it seemed like a normal stop, but for some reason, it was longer. Like, I guess we overfueled a little bit, maybe, but it didn't seem like it was going to be unnormally long for us. But then we came out and saw that Ashley was way ahead of us, then we thought something was weird. But oh well.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to talk to you about your teammate. Of course, Southgate chasing the gap at the very end there, and closed the distance. He certainly did. Most of what was asked of him, it just couldn't convert right at the very end. But in a way, that wasn't really his fault, because Ashley B was able to defend so hard to try and keep that position. Are you feeling kind of disappointed that you didn't get first place, or are you happy with second place, especially considering the fight at the end there?
We're always disappointed to not get first. That's the whole point of it, isn't it?
True racing driver, yes.
Yeah, Adam did a great job. He did everything I could ask him to do. He's a fantastic driver. He's really fast, really consistent, and yeah, he tried his hardest, but it just ended up we got second today, and that's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. So after a pretty crazy first race and a recovery in the second race, how does that set you up for the next couple of rounds of this season? Are you feeling confident?
Yeah, feeling pretty confident. We've been feeling like we've had pace to be up towards the front anyways. It's been a bit of a mess the start of this season, so hopefully we can carry this momentum forward and really get it together and stop making these little mistakes that we keep making that mess us up. So yeah, hopefully we can move forward and keep staying up front and putting on a good show for y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there are finishes like that to come, I think we're definitely going to be very happy. But thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck in your next races.
Thank you. You have a good day.
All right, there we go. That was Jonathan Sterling as part of CXR Project Black, coming home P2 here today in race number 2. But they give it a massive effort.
Massive effort indeed, and what a charge it was. At one point we were wondering they had burnt all the tires off their car. Great to see that fight all the way to the last lap. We have one more interview for you guys before we wrap up today's coverage of the IVRA GT Sprint Series, and we're now joined by the drivers from the Team Heiskeveld number 48 car. We've got both Andrzej Raczkowicz and Jan Sentikowski in the booth with us. And guys, it was a difficult race number 1 for you, but Jan got into the car at the end of race number 1, put some good driving in to move up the order just a little bit, and then in this reverse grid race number 2, doing a great job to be able to continue that momentum, and one of the fastest cars on the track. Just unfortunate to only get there onto that third and final podium position.
Yeah, I just messed up the qualifying, putting us on P22. That was horrible because it was over a second slower than I should have done. And so I started from the back, just thought, okay, keep it together. I know there will much be happening on the track on cold tires and survive, and then give it to Jan getting the last positions. And I managed it into the top 10 in the first stint, and Jan made it clear for a good result.
A good result here, and a good result for your teammates as well in race number 1, taking home the race win. What's the trick to a format like this in your guys' mind? You've got the race number 1 where obviously you want to push as far forward as you can. Your teammates managed to climb up into 5th place in this race number 2, but this reverse grid can tend to cause a lot of chaos. And Jan, specifically for you, as you were making your way through the field in race number 2 at the start, how chaotic was it, and what are some of the things that you're going to be looking at for the next round at Daytona that you can do a little bit better?
Yeah, it was pretty chaotic, especially in the second race then with the reverse grid. You have to watch out for the other cars and to not get involved in any incidents, to have a optimal car at the end. And yeah, safe overtakes, knowing what the others are doing, and it's always a bit tricky when you go further up the field. There's sometimes then the still slower cars there, so yeah, you have to expect their braking points and not run into them in the end. So yeah, you always have to be cautious and make no mistakes, safe overtakes, and that's the big thing in these reverse grid races. The second one, and also looking where the traffic then is during the boxing stops. So yeah, during the pit stops. That's, I think, the bad thing. If I'm in Daytona there, hopefully not. I was just a substitute for today's guy who has internet connection problems. Hopefully it's solved then during the next weeks until the next race. Because I'm just here for if there's no other one ready for the series.
Got it. Well, you guys are busy. You're not just competing here in the IVRA GT Sprint Series. We see you in other IVRA competitions. You're competing in 24-hour esports, which is happening at the same time as well. But specifically about IVRA competitions, you guys have a lot of teams entered across the 4 different series that IVRA competitions run. Why specifically do you guys enjoy this GT Sprint Series as opposed to the more endurance-focused series that the IVRA leagues have run typically in the past? This is the first season of GT Sprint. Endurance and Club Sport are now in their 4th and 8th years respectively. It's great to see this GT Sprint combination of type of racing as well coming to this IVRA category, and it always gets mixed up a little bit. There's something about IVRA competitions. There's always action at the end of every race.
Yeah, of course, it's very simple. The crew is just doing, the team of IVRA is just doing an incredible job. We love the organization, we love the drivers, and how is everything managed, and how they push through the penalties. Like with the pits, we did get enough of them by ourselves, and that's just cool. And because so you can really make the series great, and it's just pure fun, and we are fully committed to the IVRA this season.
Awesome, guys. Well, Andre, we'll hope to see you at Daytona. Jan, I hope to see you at Daytona. Sounds like you don't hope to see us, but enjoy this result and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
So that was the crew for the number 48. I have to watch myself because Andre joined our team speak with the number 78 on his username, confusing me just a little bit. But nevertheless, for the Team Heiskenveld guys, a good result, Connery. And as we just look to wrap up today's coverage of the IVRA GT Sprint Series, an entertaining one, and I think one that's going to shake up the championship standings quite a bit.
I mean, with this, it being the second race meeting of the season, there's certainly a chance that could have happened anyway. But I think we are going to definitely see the order be mixed up. Of course, a lot of the teams having very mixed results here early on in the season, and the season having not settled down just yet. It's kind of hard to see who holds all the cards as far as the advantage is concerned. So. I can't wait to see what the rest of the season holds. Of course, I'm not going to be the regular commentator on it, but if we get more finishes like that, I'm going to have to speak a few words to Hugo.
Just a few words to Hugo, but let's take a look then at the schedule. Wrapped up race weekend number 2 just a few moments ago. Finished our, not European leg, but let's say the UK leg of the calendar. We'll head next time to Daytona International Speedway. That's December 6th, though just over 5 weeks away from today for race weekend number 3. Then we head to Circuit Park Zandvoort, Road Atlanta, and Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. So some very, very intriguing tracks on the schedule. And my oh my, if we see racing like we've seen from the first 2 rounds here in the IVRA GT Sprint Series, I have no doubt we'll get a few more finishes like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's great to have this season on board, have the organisation on board as well, and of course, the race results from this race at least very, very provisional, at least for the mid-pack runners. So we'll have to see how that sorts itself up when it comes to the next round of competition, and the students have gone through and put everyone in their place. But as long as we can get those starts sorted out, I think this is going to be for a fantastic run and a fantastic series.
Absolutely, and while IVRA GT Sprint Series isn't going to return until the beginning of December, IVRA competitions return in just a few weeks' time. Round number 2 of the IVRA Endurance Series comes to us November 7th. 4 hours of racing action from Phillip Island. You're not going to want to miss that after what was a crazy 12 hours of Spa to open things up. That's going to be it for us here today on the 25th of October. A long way to go till the next race weekend here in the IVRA GC Sprint Series. But for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, I've been joined by Connery Maddock up in the virtual commentary booth. Once again, TV cameras provided to us by Istvan Balor and TrackCams 22. Additional car cameras are provided to us by our own Tyler Maxson. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we hope to see you in 6 weeks' time for another race weekend from the IVRA GT Sprint Series.